tell Dave it's on. Okay, wait, give Nancy a second. I just turned it on, yeah. Are you ready? Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, meeting is now going to come to order. Everybody please find your seats. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is now going to come to order. Everybody please be quiet and find your seats. We're now going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Acevedo.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. You killed it.
Do you want to do the announcements now?
Okay. Before we start, the other business of the meeting is a couple of announcements. Number one, we would like to welcome our new zoning board commissioner, Mr. Vincent Lace. If anyone is interested in case number 3300, which was the application of Ed Seppa at 4 Pennsylvania Court, we're not going to be voting on that. I believe the date is October 24th. We'll be voting on that. I think so, but it's that Thursday in October. And the third item is case number 3319, which is the application of Anthony Panabianco at 455 East Park. That's been adjourned for this evening and rescheduled.
Commissioner Olton?
Present.
Commissioner Creighton?
Present.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Present.
Commissioner Lees? Commissioner Brooks?
Present.
Commissioner Leonetti? Chairman Morelli?
Present.
Commissioner Leonetti is absent. Case number 2979, application of 250-258 East Park Enterprises Incorporated and Ben Ferrante of 2700 Two Brothers Court, Oceanside, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the City of Long Beach, New York. 9-106.2 mixed use prohibited, 9-113 off-street parking, for a modification to variance number 2979 to expand the existing mixed use from 2 units above commercial to 3 units above commercial at 250 East Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 125, Lot 22, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Who will introduce a motion on this application?
I'll make a motion to grant with condition precedent that applicant first obtains and files an easement for all. Okay. Can you hear me now? Hello? We'll try that. All right, so the motion is to grant with condition precedent that applicant first obtains and files an easement for all properties on this strip. In the event the applicant does not obtain the easement, the variance will be null and void.
Commissioner Acevedo has introduced a motion to grant the application with conditions. Who will second? Chairman Morelli.
Second with that above condition.
Chairman Morelli is second in the motion. Commissioner Olton?
Grant with conditions.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant with said conditions.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Grant with conditions.
Commissioner Lees? Commissioner Brooks?
Grant with conditions.
Chairman Morelli.
Grant with conditions.
This application has been granted with the conditions stated on the record. Case number 3314, application of Jeannette Giada of 517 Franklin Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the City of Long Beach, New York. 9-112.2 off-street parking, 9-112.2H off-street parking. For off-street parking in the front yard at East Huston Street, 517 Franklin Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 152, Lot 137, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening.
Hi,
Just give us your name and address for the record, please.
my name is Jeannette Giada, 517 Franklin Boulevard,
Okay.
Long Beach.
And please describe to us what you're seeking to do with the variance. I understand you want to park a vehicle, am I correct, on
Yes.
basically what's considered the front of the house.
Right, it's East Hudson, on the East Hudson
Okay,
side.
and
which is the
number
side.
one, the reason that you want that is?
Well, on the two-family house, we only have one spot. On the ramp. The ramps are small, so we end up cars parking right on the edge of it, and there's a car behind us, so we have challenges getting out. We're not taking away any street parking, so.
Okay, so basically now, the second item, obviously, on the code that we're seeking relief from is this parking spot itself. So you're at a length of about 17 feet, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the width? The width,
It's
you
20
have the
it's
required
10
9
right
feet,
now.
am I correct?
I'm sorry?
You have the 9 feet on the width, am I
No,
correct?
yeah, it's 9 or 10 feet.
Okay. The next question is, insofar as getting access to the spot, if it's going to be granted, how will you access it? In other words, are you going to need a widening of the curb cut?
Yes.
How much do you plan on widening the curb cut?
I think 20 feet? Another 10
So you'd
feet.
be adding 10 feet. So then are you saying that the total curb cut would be a total of 20 feet, am I correct?
Correct.
Because it's 10 feet at present. Okay. Any members of the board have any questions about this? Anyone from the audience would like to speak in favor? Anyone in the audience want to speak against this application? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant.
I'll second it.
Case number 3314, application of Jeannette Giada of 517 Franklin Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-112.2G off-street parking, 9-112.2H off-street parking, for off-street parking in the front yard at East Hudson Street at 517 Franklin Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 152, Lot 137, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Commissioner Acevedo has introduced a motion to grant the application. Chairman Morelli has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Grant.
Commissioner Lees? Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
Chairman Morelli?
Grant.
This application has been granted.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Case number 3315, application of Living Trust of Danielle Steele of 657 Laurelton Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.1J subdivision for subdividing a 100 by 138 parcel into 150 by 141 and 150 by 135 parcels at 657 Laurelton Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 41, lots 29 through 35 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening, Mr. Bennifer. Just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Nelson Vanoker. I'm acting tonight as the trustee of the Daniel Steele Living Trust. I'm acting tonight as the trustee of the Daniel Steele Living Trust. Can you hear me?
Well, you know, I don't know, maybe the microphone.
The microphone
Loud
is,
tonight, you know, so-
I don't know if it's on.
Folks, unfortunately,
1, 2, 3.
microphones don't really seem that loud this evening. I mean, can you hear me? I guess you can, right?
1, 2.
Okay, now we're on.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of an issue with the mic, so I
We'll
just
start
ask
again.
everyone to try to pay attention. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Nelson Vanoker. I'm an attorney in town, and I'm here representing the Living Trust of Daniel Steele as the trustee of the Living Trust. A little background, Mr. Steele passed away on April 3rd, 2020. When he did pass away, Walter Belling, an attorney in town, was named the successor trustee. Mr. Belling resigned, and I became the successor trustee April 21st, 2021. The Living Trust, which the real estate is in, provides that it was Mr. Steele's wishes that his two sons, Charles Steele and Robert Steele, continue to reside at the house at 657 Laurelton Boulevard for the remainder of their lives. The trust further provides that the trustee, in his sole discretion, may sell the property should it become necessary to properly care for the grantor's sons. After the trust was prepared, Mr. Steele took out a reverse mortgage on May 5th, 2015 in the original amount of $443,000 and $479. $443,479. After Mr. Steele passed away, the reverse mortgage was called in and had to be satisfied within 3 to 6 months. The loan was not satisfied due to lack of funds in the trust, and there's currently a foreclosure proceeding against this property. As of July 6th statement, there is currently owed $669,027.90. In addition, the taxes, real estate taxes on this property are $26,391 a year. In addition to the foreclosure action, the house is in extremely bad condition, could almost be deemed uninhabitable. We provided you, I don't know if it's been provided to you, an inspection report. It was emailed earlier this evening. And the inspection report shows that there's mold, there's water damage, there's structural damage, and there's electrical issues. It would probably cost over $500,000 to put this house back in good condition. We understand the history of this house in this town. It is a beautiful house and has a lot of sentimental value to the family and to the town in general. However, based upon the fact of the foreclosure action and the condition of the house, on October 15th, 2021, the property was listed for sale with Fresh Start Properties. The listing price was $1.5 million. The property was shown for 6 months. 25 people viewed the property, and there are 2 open houses. On April 5th, 2022, we entered into the subject contract with David Chokran, a local builder, for the price of $1.250 million. The contract is contingent upon this variance being granted to subdivide the property. The contract also provides that once the property is ready to close, the escrow money that I'm currently holding as a down payment can be released to cover the rent and security to find a new location for Charles Steele and Robert Steele prior to closing. All of these plans have been reviewed by courts. In Long Beach Court, a warrant of eviction was granted with both sons having counsel representing them. It was Mr. Steele's primary objective to provide for his 2 sons, Charles Steele and Robert Steele. One of the fundamental characteristics of a trust is that the trustee's fiduciary duty is to the beneficiaries. At the most basic, that means that the trustee must act in the best interest of the beneficiaries. As stated in the trust, it was Mr. Steele's interest to provide for his sons. As stated in the trust, the trustee, in his sole discretion, may sell the property if it becomes necessary for the proper care of the grantor's sons. Based upon the fact that there's a foreclosure action against this property and the terrible condition of the property and no funds to satisfy the mortgage and nor repair the house nor pay real estate taxes, the only logical solution was to sell the property and use the remaining funds to provide for his 2 sons, Charles Steele and Robert Steele, and allow them to have a dignified life for the rest of their life and not end up in public housing if the foreclosure action goes through. I'm going to introduce David Chokran, who is the builder, to discuss the actual plans of what they plan to do on this
I have a
property.
couple of questions before
Sure.
we proceed with the next portion. First of all, how old are the sons?
They're both over 60 years old.
Okay. The question I would have is this, is that the house is in foreclosure, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Who holds the lien against the house?
The bank that lent the money.
Okay. So I would assume that, let's just assume that this variance were not granted. The house would return to the foreclosure proceeding, am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. At that point, whoever then would hold the title from the foreclosure on the house would probably try to auction it, sell it, whatever, right? So the next person who came before would be probably in the same position, am I correct? They were looking to get a subdivision, which may or may not be granted, right? So at this point, now, what would continue to happen to the two sons? Do they continue living in the home until all this goes on? Because you mentioned the eviction proceeding.
They're going to remain in the home until either the sale goes through, prior to the sale, and we find them a new place. If the variance isn't granted, they'll live in the home until the bank forecloses and evicts them.
Okay. But that could also probably take years, correct?
The foreclosure action was started in 2020.
Okay. What's that?
So the lender knows of this action being, or going on right now where you're trying to sell, and they're okay with holding off on this until this is,
The bank?
taken care of one way or the other? Excuse me, but I'm speaking right into the microphone. If it's not working,
Folks, if you can't hear, then try to get together, move a little closer. I understand. We want to keep social distancing because of, let's say, COVID concerns. But the bottom line is the microphones can only carry as far as they carry.
question is,
All right, then, you know what? We're trying to do the best we can. Move a little closer. If it's not good enough, we can't change the volume of the microphone. Okay.
the question is, the current lender, are they okay with waiting until this has been remedied one way or the other?
No, they're not. They're moving the case forward.
Want to pass? Yeah, here's my microphone.
Well, I already said what I said. The answer.
Okay.
Testing,
Do
testing.
you want to,
Hold on one second, folks.
Mr.
Let's just
Tanoka,
check
you want
all
to turn
mics.
maybe towards the audience, or do we have a louder microphone? Maybe it's the microphone.
My mic isn't working on it.
Yeah. Is there any, Robert, is there any way of raising the volume?
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
It was working before.
This is an XLR cable, but there's probably an amplifier somewhere where it all feeds in.
Yeah, that's got it, you know. It used to be in the back room. Joe.
No.
You know what I mean?
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Rockles is working fine. Is yours working?
I'm dead. So it might be the amplifier. Yeah, I'm on. So most likely like the amplifier, wherever it's on. Sorry. One of the classes I teach is video production at TV studio. So I'm like, I know they were working on Tuesday.
Mine was working earlier tonight. It just went out.
No. Before it was working. Yellow.
Where the equipment was.
Testing 1, 2, 3. One, two, three.
Something.
Was that? News has been over.
A second it was. So we're still on, but nothing's working. Awesome. Testing. Yes, was, but apparently no longer. Hello, testing, testing.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Hello. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2. That one's working. The first one.
Do we have anybody in house who knows how to wire? How does things wire? Check the PA system. Where's the PA system? Oh, they're looking at it?
Okay, folks, I guess we've got a technical problem because the amplifiers are right
1
there,
2.
and they're all turned on to maximum volume, and if you heard when one of the commissioners was talking, it was distorting, so that's called clipping, and what happens is probably one of the power stages is blown on the amp. So there's really nothing we can do other than try to talk as loud as we can, because it does appear that the amp is blown, connections are fine, it's on its, maximal volume, that's why it sounded distorted, but it's not outputting the power. So I guess we're gonna try to speak as best we can. So everybody try to listen. All right, so we'll resume the meeting, and the questions were about the bank.
Right. So the question was.
Maybe we should stand up and project a little more or whatever.
The question was, is the lender right now that has already started foreclosure proceedings, are they okay with waiting until this is remedied one way or the other?
No, they are moving forward, and notwithstanding that, every day that goes by is costing money because there's a per diem on this mortgage. The answer was no, the bank is not waiting.
And I'd like to know, the asking price is 1.5 million, but you're saying you're getting an offer for 1.25 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you ever auctioned this house to see what the best market is for this? Like put in the New York Times, see how much the best bidder would offer?
The broker took care of this. They listed the house. They had showings. They had open houses.
Has it been listed in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal as an open auction?
I do not know if the broker did that.
All right.
Okay, so if you wanted to present Mr. Shokrian, let's hear from Mr. Shokrian, I guess.
Can I just ask one question?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Who's the broker?
Fresh Start Properties.
And who's
Daniel Byrne is the broker.
Daniel, I don't even, I mean, the broker's not a local broker, I'm gathering, right?
They are local. He's in Oceanside.
Yeah? What's the relationship that he was trying to sell the house? I mean, it's not a known brand to many people.
I work with Fresh Start Property over the years. I know that they do good work.
Did he multiple list it?
It was on multiple listing.
Okay, so I guess at this point.
Is Dan here?
Excuse me?
Is Dan here?
No, he's not.
Okay, we'd like to know more about the listing efforts and where it was published and if there was an auction. Okay?
He would have been here tonight, but it's his wife's birthday.
Okay, thank you.
And taking her out for dinner.
All right. So if there aren't any more questions from the board members about this portion, I'll have Mr. Shokrian come up.
Okay. Mr. Shokran?
Good evening, Mr. Shokrian.
Good evening to you.
Your name and address, please.
My name is David Shokrian, 100 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, Suite 301.
Go ahead, Mr. Shokrian.
What I handed to you are the list of property owners within the area map. You already have that list. What you don't have is that what is the size of the properties of these people in that area. What you notice is that, and what we are going to present to you, you have the two surveys that in case the property is subdivided, each property would measure around 7,000 square feet, which is larger than any of the properties in that area. In other words, we are not creating substandard size properties in the neighborhood. The other thing is that if you wanted to define the neighborhood between Laurelton and Lafayette, where all the houses run from Pine Street to West Bay Drive, and the way this property is being subdivided is in the same fashion. There are going to be two pieces of property which run from Bay Drive to Pine Street. You would notice again the same thing, that the size of each property still is going to be larger than any other property on that block between Laurelton and Lafayette, except for one, which would be the property all the way down on the corner of Lafayette. One of the main things that zoning boards usually emphasize is that what is the damage to the neighborhood? What's detrimental to the neighborhood?
Just to correct you, that's not something the zoning board emphasizes. That's one of the legal factors the zoning board has to consider in whether or not to grant the variance.
You expressed it better than myself was going to say. Compared to the benefit to the applicant. Again, realize that I'm not the applicant. The applicant is the state. In this case, the two brand new homes would simply increase the value of other properties in the neighborhood. It has absolutely no negative impact on the neighborhood. On the other side, the fact that a house filled with mold and all the structural damage that it has, if it is removed from the neighborhood, it would be for the benefit, safety, and health of the people in the neighborhood. I would answer any questions that you may have, and I would ask for one opportunity after the people that might oppose the application, if we need to answer some of their concerns, we would like to do that.
I'm not concerned about mold. I mean, everybody in Long Beach has gone through mold remediation after Sandy, and that's something that just simply can be taken care of with a contractor. So that I don't really think is a valid point, but I'd like to know more about the structural issues of the house.
There was an inspection done on the house. There is an engineer report. We emailed that to Robin.
Could we, okay.
I would ask Robin to email the full report to all of you.
We received it, but we received it before we came in the door here, so we did not go through it yet.
Okay.
Then it was emailed again. Was it a different report than the one?
No, the same report.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever it is worth, I was discussing this with my wife that, we are going to the zoning board. She did say to me that she does know the house. I said, how come you know about the house? She said 25 years ago, through Long Beach Historical Society, she did take a tour of the house. She said 25 years ago, when I looked at the house, I said to myself, this house needs a lot of repair. One can imagine 25 years later, what would be the condition of the house. Mm-hmm. The fact is, not $1 ever has been spent on the house, simply because...
Understood.
Folks, wait. Folks, let's give him a chance to speak. Everyone will have a chance if they want to speak against it. But right now, this man is up at the podium, he's speaking, and we're not going to allow voices all over the place.
But again, the report done by the engineer speaks for itself about the condition of the house.
We'll look at that. Okay.
Sure.
All right. That's Michael. Regarding the maintenance of the house, I'd just like to let you know that in the years I've been in Long Beach,
yes.
I look at all the beautiful historic homes in Long Beach up and down Penn Street. Every single one of them has gone through a gut and renovation and has had substantial investment by people who are interested in preserving these homes. So I think that a renovation is not, regardless, is something that the house does need. I agree with that. But I don't think that means that it should necessarily be a reason for taking it down.
The fact is, the house has been on the market for about a year on multiple listing service. Anybody and everybody in this world had the opportunity to look at the house and come to a conclusion for themselves that, yes, we would like to buy the house and renovate the house. You know, I understand the house has so much sentimental value, not only for the relatives of the owners of the house, even for the neighborhood and city of Long Beach. But the fact is, what people like is a house where it brings light and view of the bay to the house. This is not a house that, first of all, it's not going to be FEMA compliant no matter how much money you're going to spend in the house. And it doesn't take advantage of all that view and all the light that it could offer in a FEMA compliant house. Everybody and anybody has had the opportunity to look at it, and nobody has made an offer. The other fact about being historical or not being historical, the fact is, as I think some members of the Historical Society are here, and they would tell you, they have known about the sale of this house for about a year. And it is not registered with New York State as a historical house. I think the response they got from New York State was that they would not register a single family home in a residential neighborhood as historic. One of the things that I could do, and I would try to do if the zoning is approved, is that try to preserve, like the arch where it has the name of the house on it, we would try to preserve it so that when the new houses are built, you know, it would be displayed on the corner. Or anything else that we could preserve before the house is demolished to be incorporated into the two new homes to be built. If the zoning is not approved, the end result would be this. And the longer it takes for foreclosure, the amount of money owed to the bank keeps going up. And when it is eventually foreclosed, the amount of money left, if anything, to go to the two brothers who live in the house is going to be reduced and reduced, maybe to nothing. What's going to happen is that they become a burden to New York State and Long Beach housing to take care of them. So whether we do it or whether we want to kick the can down the road, eventually this house is going to be demolished.
I just still think it'd be fair to see what an open auction best bid would bring in if it went to the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and all of these areas, number one. And number two, an independent inspection report to determine what the real cost of repairing this house would be, because I believe it's a terracotta home. It's not a wood frame home that's like rotting and sinking, sill plates and all of that. So I just think that a little more due diligence in coming to a decision would be encouraged. Okay.
I'm saying in a free open market, the house was on the market, has been on the market for about a year. I know that's what you wish to happen.
I know a couple who wanted. I know a couple that wanted to see it.
But where have they been all this
time? There's already a pending offer that they can't.
You know, that's fair. If anybody else wants to offer the money which is being offered, you know, I step aside.
I'm just saying, I do know, somebody said, I said, oh, you're looking for an historic home, there's a home. They said, we called, they said there's a pending offer, we couldn't see it. That's what the answer was, just letting you know, okay?
All right, does anyone else want to ask any questions of Mr. Shokin before we proceed?
Have you given any thought as to what type of homes you would put up?
You know, it is such a unique location, and FEMA compliant houses which they're going to end up to be 3-story houses here. I'm going to say that to you. I want to emphasize that we will not ask for any other variances to build these houses. The houses are going to comply with the zoning code in terms of height, parking, density, and everything else. no other variances will be asked in future. But a FEMA compliant house here with tall windows is going to bring all that light, all that view into these houses. It is such a unique location. I mean, there are going to be colonial homes. I mean, you know, simply a colonial house. And there is enough property here to also have a swimming pool. To me, they are going to be very unique, extremely beautiful house in future should the variance be granted. If another factor that I would want to mention, I don't know whether or not that is a factor or not, the amount of taxes that the house brings to the city and to state, to school system, based on what these houses could sell in future, it could triple the amount of tax revenues that the two new homes are going to bring compared to what this house is bringing right now.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Why not just purchase the house as is and not seek variance? Do what you're talking about with building a beautiful house overlooking the bay.
This house is beyond repair. I wouldn't be interested in purchasing the house. I would not buy the house. My only intention is for the price that we are offering to be able to build two houses here. Again, the property has been on open and free market for about a year, and nobody else wanted to buy it. I would disagree just with one point that Nelson brought, that he believes that the cost of renovating this house is going to be $500,000. You know, we do this every day. The amount of money which has to be spent in renovating this house easily could be $1 million. $500,000 doesn't do much for you these days with the cost of construction. So why would I buy this house for $1,250,000 and spend another $1 million for a house which at the end is not what an average person wants? And nobody wants to pay that type of money for a house which is not taking advantage of all the view and all the light that the bay has to offer, and still not a FEMA compliant house. Because the first floor of this house, you know, is going to be in flood zone, no matter how much money you spend on it. Did I answer? Sure.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Vinoco, do you want to continue with the presentation, or have we come to the end of it? Because I'd like to open it up to the audience now.
So
You can rebut if you want to.
I would just
I'll
like
give
to
you that opportunity.
I would just like to repeat what Mr. Shokaran said, that the building of the houses will have no negative impact on the neighborhood. It will benefit the neighborhood. Failing to get the variance will not benefit the beneficiaries. It puts them in danger of ultimately being homeless after the foreclosure action is completed. So at that point, that's what I'd like to say.
All right, thank you, sir. I'm going to open it up first to the people who might be in favor of the application. Is there anybody here in favor? Okay. Mr. Kelly, you can come up.
Good evening. Dennis G. Kelly, 120 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, 11561. Here on behalf of one of the beneficiaries of the trust, Robert Steele. First, I'd like to just preface my comments by mentioning that I live in the neighborhood. I walk by the house 2 times a day for the last 23 years. I like the corner. I like the house. It did clearly, obviously, fall into significant disrepair after Sandy. There was some work done on the home. It had a little bit of a better look from West Bay Drive than it did just after Sandy. However, I've also been in the house. The house is going to need significant, tender loving care and money, serious money. I did a renovation on my house back in 2004 over on West Fulton Street. That was $300,000. This has got to be easily $500,000. Just by going inside, you can tell. And by the way, it's worth restoring if you can get it restored. I haven't heard anybody tell me that they're coming to buy the property at fair market value and be able to restore the house. And I'm concerned for my client relative to how much money, yes, I'm going to say it, I need to get as much money as possible out of this property to benefit my client, Robert Steele, and his brother as well, though I don't represent his brother.
I just want to stop you because we are hearing about, the two Steele brothers. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to assume, and please clarify this for me, they are either by age or infirmity, they are in a position financially where they don't work, they don't have any income, they could not purchase or have paid off the liens on the house. Am I correct?
That's correct. Nowhere near close. My client, I believe, is 71 years old. He has meager, very, very meager means. He takes good care of his brother, who I believe is a little younger. And he has even more meager means. I'm talking, less than $1,000 a month. Okay? So their father intentionally did this to benefit the two of them. Now, there was a greater plan or first plan relative to the trust, and that was one of the granddaughters was to move in and take care and so on and so forth. But having attended landlord-tenant proceedings, having attended guardian proceedings in the Supreme Court, I have yet to hear anybody within the family, or for that matter outside the family, come up with a financial solution to first and foremost take care of these two men and keep the house. So that's why we're here now. Having said that, because I do this all the time and I don't want to take up any more time, if we follow the law, what's being proposed is not outside the character of the neighborhood in any way, shape, or form. The lots are going to be bigger than what's required in Zone B. It's not going to be detrimental to anybody in the neighborhood, other than we're going to lose Clara House. I get that. I feel the same way. Okay? But you're going to end up building two FEMA-compliant houses with adequate parking. And they're going to be nice, right? Are the variances requested substantial? It depends on what you mean by substantial in the subdivision case. Doesn't seem like it's going to be substantial. You're going to have two above required lots to build these homes on.
I have a question for you, because I know this is, it's an emotionally charged case. Let's face it. But there's also the law. That the home did not have historical status. Is that correct?
Yeah, I try to look it up on the national.
We'll give you guys a chance to speak.
I don't know the answer to the question, to be honest with you, Chairman Morelli. I did try to look it up on the National Registry. I didn't see it, but maybe I'm not looking properly.
Okay, that's the first thing. So it seems to me that there was a lot of poor planning, though, at this point, because, Mr. Steele, I guess, really continued to not have a reverse mortgage. The bulk, it sounds, of the value of this home was eaten up by the repayment and the satisfaction of that reverse mortgage.
I think it's a whole different ballgame if we didn't have the reverse mortgage.
He really didn't go about it in the right way. Especially it seems that if the kids were in a situation, the men were in a situation that they would need care, numbers-wise, I'm just looking even at, my own elderly mother. I don't even know if the sale goes through with Mr. Shokrian and, the house is demolished and everything else, that after it's all said and done, it seems to me like the amount of money that they're going to walk away with, your clients are going to walk away with, is negligible even at this point, really. Because $80,000 a year at minimum, okay? If they don't realize, $500,000 apiece, which honestly we all know they're not.
That's right.
How long will they be able to even be cared for before the Medicaid kicks in? So my concern is that even if, let's say, we approve all this, the money that's going to come out of it is not even going to serve the intended purpose. What will they get realistically? A year or two in a nursing facility or a health-related
I don't
facility?
think-
Because it sounds like they may need some sort of, health-related housing.
It's a great question because I think it raises two issues. First off, life expectancy. Who knows? Their father lived well into his 90s,
it was
right?
close to
So
100,
there may come a
wasn't it?
point where they're going to qualify for Medicaid. Bear in mind the money's in the trust, so once the money is depleted, they should qualify right away.
But it still takes a while, you know that. I mean, it could
Yeah,
take 6
yes,
months.
yes.
to a
And
year
listen,
minimum.
if I'm just ballparking it because I don't remember the last figure. If you can rent an apartment, the two brothers are going to stay together. They're virtually attached by the hip. One takes care of the other. You may find a nice apartment and be able to do, and they live meagerly already, you know. So we're not talking about high taste and whatnot as far as how they spend money. Having said that, to answer your questions, you know, and to Commissioner Alton's questioning, which I don't disagree with at all. I get the questions. The answer is in what happens next, right? Even if you deny it, I don't think it gets better.
The bank's debt keeps going up.
Right. Does it ever get better? Well, listen, we would all like Daddy Warbucks or Mommy Warbucks from a hedge fund in Manhattan to show up. I mean, seriously, that's what, with the real estate craze that we had, one of the hopes was Mr. or Mrs. Moneybags would show up and say, you know what, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to restore a historical house. I love this old house.
Well, you know, when you see lesser homes, I'm not going to say lesser homes, but homes that are on less desirable pieces of property that are going for $4 and $5 million, one has to question, though, you know, why no one has bought this property when it's only selling for $1.5 million.
The house up the road from it sold for $2 million on a smaller property. So if this house, honestly, the Band-Aid on that, I mean, it's a Band-Aid what they're going to get these guys when it's all over with. It's not going to sustain them for life from what I'm gathering. But even if you took a bit of a cut like 1.1 million and somebody threw 500-600 into it,
$1 million.
They're getting a $2 million house out of this deal.
Maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more.
Because of the view.
Yeah.
Look at the house that's selling for $4.5
And the view is not
million.
that terrible. It's not flat to the ground.
But
it is an elevated first floor. The first floor is above the bulkhead.
Right. So I don't disagree with that, but from my perspective, the bottom line is what does Robert and Charles Steele get out of, you know, how do they go? Love somebody show up with $3 million and say, I'll repair the house. My clients get their money to live for a few years in comfort, and the house stays there and the neighborhood stays the same. I live in that neighborhood. I don't disagree with that position at all.
Okay.
But what's real?
Thanks, Mr.
Thank
Cohen.
you.
All right, I saw another hand. Come up, man. In favor, that was, right?
My name is Martha Ross. I live at 151 West Penn Street. I happen to be very familiar with Clara and Dan Steele, and yes, their house was put on the National Register and the New York State Register of Historic Places. I worked with them. I had the girl from Albany come to their house and look at it, and she approved of it, and they did their paperwork. It is historical. So that answers that one question. The second question is, while we were working on putting the house on the National Register, I got to know the Steele family very well. I'm very familiar with the whole family, the two boys, and also with the whole house. And here I printed up, I don't know if everybody here is familiar with what the house looks like. I would have liked to have made more. It just an outgoing place to go when you needed a place.
Can I
And
ask
that
you a
was
question?
along with their family.
I'm just going to stop you for a second. There seems to be some sort of plaque. Do you know what that plaque
Yes,
says?
it's one plaque is for the National Register and the New York State Register. And then another plaque that's on the house is from the Historical Society.
But that in itself, does that have any
That
legal
in
bearing?
itself, no, but it is a marker, and it does state the period the house was born, built in, sorry, we say born, but it does give it some significance. But the greatest significance is the National Register and Historic Register.
But from what you're telling me, it doesn't sound like you're, though, speaking in favor of the application, all right?
Not at all. I'm
All right, well,
speaking.
but I want to make this clear.
Oh.
I asked for people in favor first.
Oh, no, I'm in favor of the house being saved.
But
not-
that's not what I asked for. I asked
I wasn't listening.
you're speaking
My
in
mind was
opposition.
just
All right,
on
so
one thing.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now I need to. I appreciate what you've said, but I need to hear from anybody else before we move on to opposition. Mr. Kelly spoke in favor of the application to demolish the home and subdivide because of his client's interest financially. There's no one else now that wants to speak in favor, correct? All right, so now we get to people who are against, and you were the first one that spoke against, all right?
Not against.
There are
I'm
other hands, so I'd like to
against
hear
the
the other
variance.
hands. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, and I did speak to somebody that was in a position to buy the house,
Right.
but until I heard the price, 1.2 million, they kind of was like, oh, I don't think we can really swing all of that. And they were willing to work around having the two brothers stay there while work was being done on the house, which is not going to happen overnight.
Okay, thank you.
I purchased a house that was going to be torn down on Penn Street, and it took us years to save it. And yes, it had mold, and yes, the sill was gone, but we rebuilt everything over years, and we've been there 21 years.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
Hello, testing, testing.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to show somebody, or everybody here, everybody could just read this. It's very important that we do remember that we are here to save, preserve for generations to come.
All right.
Our history is being lost.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sir, you can come first. No. All right, so we're going to have okay, folks, we're going to have an orderly presentation by people who are against. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name is Dan McPhee. I'm the commander of the VFW here in Long Beach. And I was a very good friend
Your
of Dan
address, sir?
Steele and his
Sir,
children.
your address?
Excuse me?
Your address.
440 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York.
Thank you.
Okay. And I've been listening to all the people speaking, and everybody talks about the same thing. Money. How much money you can get, how much money if we can tear it down, how much taxes have got to be paid. I just want to give you a different idea. Dan Steele, who entered the Army in 1946, right at the end, towards the end of World War II. He was also in during the Korean War, and he served 3 tours of duty in Vietnam as an Army officer. He was a chief warrant officer. And I don't know what the best solution would be, and that's for the zoning board, of course, to decide. But I know Dan loved his children. And Robert and Bob have been living in, Robert and Charlie have been living in there all this many, many years with Dan. And I know Dan would want them to have a safe place. And we all know that, yeah, you get money, like one of your gentlemen had said, you go to a nursing facility, there's that money gone. You're not going to get the same care from your family in your house. Man, he loved to party. We parties in the VFW there. We all got dressed up in the military uniforms. He loved being an officer in the Army. He loved America. He was a Eucharistic minister. He used to tell me I'm going out in the morning to give communion to the locked in. I said, you're 20 years older than the locked in, you know? But that's how he was. You know, and Charlie would take him, he would drive him, and they would go to where they had to go. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert would drive him, and him and Charlie would go where they had to go. We collect money here in Long Beach for poppies every year, and we collect about $50,000 worth of money, believe it or not, because we go out every day for 2 months. Dan Steele would go out, and I remember early in the morning, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, whenever he came back from church. He went to church every day also. And I'd say to him, Dan, how'd you do today? And he said, well, I made $990. And I said, you couldn't stay there 10 more minutes? You know? That's how he was. He was not a quitter. He was not going to give up. He was not over 90. I know his birthday's April 13th because mine's April 10th. So we always had a drink, you know, together. But what I would really like to see is maybe, as I said, I don't know the financial, which is the best, but give the family, who I've spoken to many a times, the opportunity to take that house, to keep that house, to pay off the bills. I know reverse mortgages and all that stuff, everything's very, very expensive. But give them the opportunity. If they can't meet the opportunity, the price of houses in Long Beach is not falling down anywhere. I paid $220,000 for my house 32 years ago. I was offered $900,000 for it already. And I said no. I love Long Beach. I ain't going anyplace. And that's how Dan was. And that's how the Steels are. We love Long Beach. We're not sitting around thinking about money and can we do this or can we do that. And I know that Dan, every time he did get some money, because he got money from the Army and he got money from insurance after Sandy, put it back into that house because I was there. And I went to his parties. For anybody who's been there, his wife's work in the bedroom is something you're never going to see again in your life. He went to Rome with his wife. Well, she was Italian, and the guards, the police at the airport in Rome, wouldn't let him take the painting on the plane because they thought it was stolen. That's how good of an artist she was. She was really a genius, you know, as an artist. But anyway, I hope that Long Beach, as we've always been helping each other out here since I've been here, this is the greatest city in the world. I hope you follow that and give them the opportunity for those boys to live there and for his granddaughter to come and take over and try to pay what they have to pay so they can stay there.
My concern, and I think that was a very heartfelt, presentation. I sorry, agree with you, and I knew him from the church as well. I saw him pretty much whenever I went every day myself. And the thing is, I can tell you that it's very emotional. But the problem is my concern is that we as people in Long Beach, I mean, I love that place too, passing it, and I lived pretty close by at one time on that part of Long Beach. But the concern is that, quite honestly, the banks don't care. And when we say, we're not going to talk about money, we have to talk about money because I could be the most generous person in the world. I'm a dentist. I could treat everybody in town for free who doesn't have any money. But at the end of the month, when my rent is due, when everything else is due, the banks don't care. How many good deeds I've done that week.
Right,
and unfortunately,
if
I just want to finish, unfortunately, I have some questions of Mr. Kelly too about the finances, but it's a very sad situation when the banks are dictating what has to be done and not done. And it seems like this reverse mortgage that Mr. Steele did take out put a significant crimp on what should have been left to the kids. And that is a problem. And I don't see that the banks are really going to care about us or the emotions or anything else. So I'm with you. I mean, I agree that this is, a house, it's a legendary home here in town. But I just don't know how it's going to play out if the banks do foreclose on it. And the more time goes by, the greater the debt, the greater the obligation that the granddaughter would have. And, you talk about, let's see if the kids could make it work. it's going to sound like it's going to be very difficult unless there was some kind of fundraising or something like that. I don't see how that's going to be possible with the numbers he's providing, Mr. Kelly. But I have another question for Mr. Kelly. So I really want to thank you for coming up here. And thank you. You know, we'll hear from other people as well. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask you a question too? Because I appreciate everything you said. I think it was very heartfelt. But you're hearing a lot of comments from both sides as to what will happen to them, the Steels, if this does not pass, this variance does not pass. Given that you know the family and you have a lot of care for them, what do you feel is the right thing to do? Because it sounds like you're against the variance, but it sounds like you want to do the best thing for the family.
Absolutely.
And to me, it sounds like they're at odds, or at least they're being argued at odds.
Right.
So I'd just like to hear your thought on that, since you seem to have known the
Well,
family so well.
listen, there are many, many ways to raise money. I don't know if that money could be raised. You know, I'd be certainly willing to join anything that anybody who wants to raise money for Dan. I've spoken to his granddaughter a couple of times, but that's going to, unfortunately, for you guys, that's going to be more of your problem than mine. I just know Dan, and I know that if we're talking and just take money out of it, and I understand that money is a big thing here. He would want the best for Charlie and Bob. And I firmly believe that he would want them to stay in there. As a matter of fact, when the first lawyer got up, he was talking about the original trust agreement, you know, which the boys, I think, were going to stay in the house at that time. But I think that's what Dan would want, at least to give them. I would want my grandchildren at least to have a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But the realistic thing here is that even if the boys were given money, wherever they went, that money would be taken away. And I want to tell you something, that I know both of those boys very well. And if they were on their own, we'd be just going to funerals in a couple of years. That's all. Because they are a little handicapped, you know, and they would not be able to exist except for with their family. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And,
okay. Mr. Kelly, you know what? I just want to, sir, before I have you come up, you have a question?
I just have a question too. Listening to you, sir, is the granddaughter in the audience tonight?
Yes.
Can we hear, like,
Yeah, let's let her. You want to have her come next, or?
Yeah, it seems.
Okay. Is the granddaughter present? I just wanted to ask, before you present, sir,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask a question of Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, you know, again, we talk about, you know, Mr. Steele, what Dan would have wanted, what Dan, and I know him. He was a great guy. I mean, I saw him dressed up every day in his suit, the old brown Mercedes that he had, you know, and he probably had that for like 30 years. But does the bank really care about what Dan wanted? And that's the problem. I said, did he have any life insurance or any other assets that these men could afford to buy this house?
Not that I'm aware of. Listen, the reverse mortgage is what put us all in this predicament.
Correct.
Because the way the trust was written, the granddaughter would move in, take care of the house, and take care of Charlie.
Right.
Bob doesn't want to live with the granddaughter, that's another issue.
Okay.
Having said all that, can you afford the house? Does it benefit? Somebody show me some numbers where I can feel better.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like the reverse mortgage is a big problem here. Okay, thanks, Mr. Kelly. We shouldn't believe Tom Selleck then, I guess, on the commercial, huh?
It's breaking up when you talk on the mic.
All right. Sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Assistant Corp Counsel Lupo, it has not been my experience that people have difficulty hearing me.
Your name and address.
My name is David A. Smith, Law Office of David A. Smith, PLLC, 500 Old Country Road, Suite 109, Garden City, New York, 11530. I have had the pleasure for the last year or more, approximately a year now, being the lawyer for the granddaughter, the much maligned granddaughter, Christina Ryan, who had the temerity to spend almost $30,000 of her own money, I know because she paid it to me, to get a guardianship for her Uncle Charlie in the Supreme Court, Nassau County, which was granted in April of 2022. You know, facts are damnable things, ladies and gentlemen, damnable things, because they don't lie. And when you have documented facts, they lie less still. I have presented this board, and I've given a copy to Mr. Vinokur, who didn't bother to serve notice of this on me or my client, or the court-appointed guardian for Charles Steele. And I gave a copy to Dennis Kelly, whom I met for the first time in the course of the guardianship proceeding. And we are both experienced litigators, and we've been, although we have differing positions in this case, surprise, surprise, civil attorneys acting in a civil manner can really make their minds meet and can try to resolve the situation. Mr. Chairman, you have raised things this evening, as I think it was perhaps you, Mr. Alton, and you, Mr. Creighton, you mentioned things about, you know, what are the overall socioeconomic impact on this overall family? What's the ramifications of the ultimate Medicaid? Well, you know, this is largely what I do, and I have tried in many different ways to wrestle this enormous mess to the ground, and I can't profess to you that I have the answers, but what I can tell you is that under the express terms of Article 3rd of this trust, and I provided you the entire trust, this trust which was drafted, as I understand it, by the original trustee, Mr. Belling, and now the successor trustee stepped in shortly after Mr. Steele died. There is a provision in Article 3rd that I dare say, you know, I did not have the pleasure. I never had the pleasure of meeting Daniel Steele. But our friend from the VFW who just spoke and so eloquently about him said, you know what, more than anything else, he wanted to make sure that Charles and Robert were protected. And that's exactly what this trust says. First and foremost, it says, grantor's primary objective is to provide for his sons, Charles Steele and Robert Steele. It is the grantor's wish that they continue to reside in the grantor's home the remainder of their lives. Upon the death of the grantor, the trustee shall hold the entire trust estate, including the real property located at 657 Laurelton Boulevard, Long Beach, New York, in trust for the benefit of grantor's sons, Charles Steele and Robert Steele. And there are then two paragraphs that this board is already apparently at least operationally familiar with, that says that in order to effectuate that, which can't be an easy thing in light of the fact that Charles and Robert are both essentially unemployed and never going to again be employed, that he put in place a provision that Christina Ryan, my client, and his granddaughter, should she choose to do so, could move in, could find a way to support that house and those men, and to the extent that she could, they would live there for the rest of their lives or until they chose to leave, and upon them, either the last of them dying or the last to leave, reverter of that house, the title would pass to my client. From the day, and this is all documented, I presented to the guardianship court, which deferred on this aspect of it. I presented two things. Number one, Charles Steele plainly needs a guardian. He's been sued in the city court, if you can imagine such a thing, on an eviction proceeding, saying he was a squatter in the house that his father left him and his brother. That got tabled by the city court when the city court found out that we were pursuing the guardianship proceeding. And what became ultimately of that orphan proceeding, I don't know. I do know that I presented to the guardianship court evidence that from the day Mr. Steele died, somehow and for some reason, and may I have counseled my client that this might not be the wisest economic decision she could ever make? Maybe I did. But somehow she, within weeks of her grandfather's passing, secured a pre-approval of a reverse mortgage in writing from a lender that provided more than $150,000 in excess of the reverse mortgage amount, and had determined that she was going to move her family in, give up her own home, and there are lots of reasons why that might not be a great idea. But under the express terms of the trust, if she could do it, and if she wanted to do it, she was to be permitted to do it. From the day, instead, from the day her grandfather died, Mr. Belling and Mr. Vinokur, and I've given Mr. Vinokur a complete copy of what I presented to each of you this evening, they precluded the reverse mortgage lender from talking to my client and told my client, forget about it, this house is being sold. And why? 6% commissions to a trustee of a trust. That's why. Whereas if you hang on to the house and you administer it in the way that it's intended under the terms of the trust, you're not going to be getting a heck of a lot. So I asked the guardianship court not only to appoint a guardian for Charles, but to displace the existing trustees for a combination of self-interest and other issues that I will not bore you with. The guardianship court tabled that and instead appointed a guardian for Charles and said, we're going to address those issues later, or you, Mr. Smith, can make an application on behalf of your client in the Nassau County Surrogates Court pursuant to Surrogates Court Procedure Act Article 7 to remove the trustees or at least rein them in to do their jobs in a manner that is consistent with the trust. Oh, mind you, there are at least 12 pages of this trust drafted by Mr. Belling after those express terms that clearly express what Daniel Steele wanted, that do nothing but protect the trustees no matter what they may choose to do, because those are not the provisions for Mr. Steele, who I dare say could not even have understood what they meant. Those are for the express purpose of protecting the trustees no matter what they do. And so they went about a course of conduct where they thought that no matter what they did, they weren't going to be called on it, and it ended up they were wrong. So now in the guardianship proceeding, Judge Gugarty, and these are all before you, Judge Gugarty in the guardianship proceeding appointed, in fact, he's a Long Beach-based attorney. He lives in Long Beach. His practice is in Queens. A guy named Gerald Gerstweiler, who spent 25 years as a clerk in the Surrogates Court and knows this stuff and knows it inside out. There is a provision in the guardianship order and judgment that Mr. Vinokur has had since the day it was signed that says, quote, ordered and adjudged no change of the place of abode of the person in need of a guardian, and that's Charles Steele, shall take place without prior court approval. Now, query whether the only thing that can, if this application were granted by this board, the request being made is to divide it into 2 lots of 50-foot width each. Now, without my stressing the beauty of this property, it's beautiful, and without my stressing that perhaps the board is interested in preserving it if it can, I'm talking pure practicality. How is Charles Steele going to live on this property if it's divided into 2 50-foot lots? He's not. The only thing that could be done to effectuate a granting of this variance that by this court would be to knock it down, and he can't be removed from that house by the order of the Supreme Court, Nassau County, unless there is a further order of the court that permits that. In addition, there is an express provision in the guardianship order, and once again, Mr. Vinokur has had it since the day it was signed, and he's got a whole package of exactly what I gave you this evening, which requires Mr. Gestweiler, quote, to act on behalf of, to serve as legal representative for and counsel to Charles Steele in connection with any and all issues relating to and arising out of the living trust of Daniel Steele, dated December 13th, 2013, in connection with which Charles Steele has a beneficial interest, and to protect, defend, and assert Charles Steele's rights and interests in connection therewith. I called Gerald Gersweiler last Thursday when I got wind of this and said, hey, Jerry, did you know that this is pending? Of course you had to know. He said, no, I didn't know. This is an outrage. And he says to me, I'm going to call Mr. Vinokur. I'm going to tell him I'm flying out to Italy with my wife on a long-planned vacation on September 21st, last night, and I hope that it will be adjourned. He told me he called I'm not going to characterize what happened in that phone call. I will tell you that obviously it didn't end up getting adjourned. There is so much wrong with what has gone on procedurally before this ever reached this august board that I must tell you, with all due respect, I don't even think that you have jurisdiction over what you're being asked to rule on in the absence of Mr. Gersweiler. Mr. Gersweiler is, for all intents and purposes, legally Charles Steele. Mr. Gersweiler did not get notification of these proceedings. I don't know what his position's going to be substantively. I do know that to this day, my client, Christina Ryan, remains ready, willing, and able. She got an updated and increased amount that the lender will grant her to retire that reverse mortgage. She's ready, willing, and able to do it. What's the worst thing that could happen to Charlie and Robert if she pays off the reverse mortgage and then she and her husband can't make the continuing payments to keep them there? What the worst that could happen is that the trustee then sells the house without there being a reverse mortgage on the property at all, and they are that much more enriched. What is absolutely clear, gentlemen and ladies, is simply this, and that is that there is so much going on here that, with all due respect, is not the province of this board, that I would respectfully suggest that, at a minimum, Mr. Vinokur has to go before Justice Gugarty and say, you know, I know there's provision in this order that says no change of the place of abode of Charles Steele shall take place without prior court approval. Please note that I'm contemplating making an application to the zoning board in the city of Long Beach that would bust up this property and force him to move. I need your approval to do that. No such thing. No such thing. So what I submit to you is that the proper thing to do, if I may presume to say so, is allow the courts to work this out. I sure now know, after having myself found out serendipitously about tonight's proceeding, what I have to do on behalf of my client in the Nassau County Surrogates Court to make sure that the court understands what's going on in the name of this trust. I thank you for your time. Yes, sir.
So I just would like to confirm, did you just say that your client has the funds or an arrangement as far as whatever loan to be able to satisfy what is supposedly a $629,000 balance, and then?
Most definitely the principal, Mr. Acevedo. In terms of the supposed penalties and interest, it is not at all clear to me. By the way, that is in litigation, and it will remain in litigation. And now Mr. Gersweiler steps into the shoes of Charles Steele in that litigation. It is my experience as a litigator of some 40 years' experience that it is highly unlikely that the lender is going to collect anything like that entire amount. The principal probably, the interest that, these are like, as is typical in the reverse mortgage industry, these are loans that have changed hands multiple times since the date that the loan was granted, to the point where it's not always easy even to trace back who the proper record owner is. But once that is all determined, there will be a number, and I believe it's going to be a lot more like $450,000, what the principal was, that they will be entitled to recover. But even if it were $500,000, I am telling you, yes, that she would have enough borrowed available to her to pay off that reverse mortgage, and a pot of money going forward to provide for Charles and Robert, because other than their rather minimal Social Security income, I don't think either of them has anything.
So is this development just coming about now?
No, sir. From the day this man died, this man being Daniel Steele, my client presented to Mr. Vinokur in writing a guaranteed pre-approved $605,000 loan, and was told, forget about it, this property is being sold. It's all documented.
But it wasn't sold. But it wasn't sold. Now, the six...
He then brought eviction proceedings. This is all, everything that has happened since. That is to say, the eviction proceeding, this proceeding, it's all engineered towards compelling a sale of property that the decedent intended never to have sold, and that there is a remedy available within this family to take care of if the trustee were cooperating. The trustee is not cooperating. It'll be up to the surrogate's court now to determine whether that means the trustee should be displaced or should be compelled to cooperate, or that I'm full of it and that he's doing the right thing and Smith doesn't know what he's talking about. That last, I don't imagine is going to happen, but it could. Litigation is litigation.
So in your belief, your client can possibly satisfy any arrangement made with the lender, possibly paying off the original amount of about $445,000, and then sustain the
Yes,
house
sir.
afterwards.
And as I said, I may have counseled my client about how if this were my young family, maybe I wouldn't choose to do that. And my client's reply was, I owe it to my grandfather. He told me I had to take care of Charlie and Robert. Robert may not like me, but Charlie does, and I got to do what Grandpa said. So that's, if I've revealed a client confidence, Christina, I hope you'll forgive me. But that's what my client said. Yes, sir.
If I remember correctly, they said this house has been on the market for almost 2 years? A year or 2 years? How long was it?
My understanding, and I'm not certain of this, you'd have to ask Mr. Vinokur this, but my understanding is that it was placed on the market shortly after the death of the decedent by a real estate agency in which the original guardian, Mr. Belling, was an associate broker. There is, by the way, a Liz pendens pending against this property filed in Nassau County.
The guardian was an associate broker.
Pardon me?
The guardian was an associate broker.
Not the guardian, the original trustee.
The original trustee. Does
Yes,
that mean
sir.
he would have gotten a commission out of the sale of it too?
Pardon me?
Would he have received a commission from the sale then too?
That's what would typically happen.
Yeah, okay, all right.
In addition to the 6% that a trustee receives.
So there's, okay.
If you make a lot of money happen when you're trustee. If this trust was operating in the way that it should operate, not a lot of money would be generated for anything except for paying off the reverse mortgage and paying the costs of Charlie and Robert living there, and my client and her family living there going forward. But that wouldn't generate commissions, you see.
So are there court proceedings in place right now for when it was put on the market, say a year ago or whatever amount of time it was? Because that it
In
looks
terms
like
of the foreclosure?
even just the putting it up on MLS for
The,
sale.
what I do know in that regard is that it could not be sold presently absent an order of the guardianship court, because Charles's place of abode cannot be changed absent order of the court. So one of the effects of a lis pendens that also notes in it the existence of a guardianship of Charles Steele is that any potential buyer is on notice to the fact that there's a lot to be unwrinkled here before you should decide to go ahead and try to buy this property, which is, my understanding, basically the purpose of a lis pendens is to warn the world that there might be something going on here that makes this an improvident purchase.
Mrs. Smith, is a foreclosure a court notice that would make Mr. Charles evicted or get him evicted?
I have not been involved in the eviction proceeding per se, pardon me, the foreclosure proceeding per se. It has been my understanding, and I'm not certain of this, it has been my understanding that's been essentially in abeyance and hasn't moved forward. I do know, having spoken to Mr. Gersweiler, the guardian, about this last week, that he has heard nothing new about the eviction proceeding since the date of his formal appointment as guardian on April 22nd, 2022.
But my question is, because you make it a point to say that he cannot be evicted other than by court notice. Is that correct? Is that what you've been saying?
By order of this court, that is to say the guardianship court. So they would have to, the eviction proceeding would have to either be moved to the guardianship part, or the guardianship judge would have to give Mr. Gerstweiler, the guardian, the authority to do whatever had to be done to properly represent Charles in the eviction proceeding.
So my next question then is, because I don't know, is does a foreclosure trump any of that?
My understanding is that the answer is absolutely not, and that it can certainly proceed. That's by which I mean the foreclosure proceeding is not prohibited by the appointment of a guardian, but rather that there would be another set of eyes on it, at least Mr. Gerstweiler, and perhaps the guardianship judge, to ensure that not more was being paid on the foreclosure settlement than needed to be paid, etc. All that has to be worked out. Mr. Gerstweiler will have the authority and duty to represent Charles in that regard, and naturally, without speaking for Mr. Gerstweiler, I can represent to you that what any guardian would do in that situation is, of course, try to minimize the payoff amount in order to retire the reverse mortgage. It does appear that nobody, just so that this board knows, it does not appear that anybody within the family knew of Daniel Steele having taken the reverse mortgage. So that does not appear to have, in essence, benefited anybody who's involved in this proceeding.
Was the guardian notified when the said eviction proceedings started?
The eviction proceeding was started before the guardianship was started. We notified the city court of its pendency. I know Mr. Kelly attended all of those proceedings. My understanding is that it was repeatedly adjourned, that is to say the eviction proceeding was repeatedly adjourned pending the appointment of a guardian. Whether or not it's still technically pending, I do not know.
What aspect of the eviction proceeding, let's just say hypothetically speaking, the eviction proceeding went forward and the two gentlemen, the home were evicted. How does this order, because the Supreme Court obviously has higher authority than the city court, how would that work?
Mr. Lupo, all I can tell you is that I have been guardian in the same situation that Mr. Gersweiler is a guardian presently, and if I were the guardian, I would notify the city court that this has to be transferred to the Supreme Court in Nassau County for Justice Gugarty to rule on it. I think you're right that jurisdictionally the city court would have to stand aside, and I'm going to take a wild guess that it would be just pleased enough to do so, too. I think you're right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, sir. Let's get through the people first.
Am I glad I'm not a lawyer? I'm Jim Hangley. I live at 331 West Pine Street, Long Beach, New York. Greatest place in America. 4 houses down from the Steele House, and I've lived there for over 30 years. I've been in the neighborhood even longer than that, but I am an actual neighbor of the Steeles. What am I going to say? Obviously, this is a big legal mumbo jumbo, and I'm opposed strictly because I know the Steele family, and I knew Mr. Steele well for 30 years as a neighbor, and I don't believe this is what's on his deathbed he ever envisioned happening, with lawyers, fighting lawyers, picking at the bones. Obviously, this gentleman here is in it for money. He wants to tear down a classic Long Beach home and put up 2 houses, not because he really cares about the neighborhood. He's going to make money while doing that. Attorney Dennis is going to get money based on apparently some sort of settlement for his client, and he'll get a percentage of that, I would guess. Christina?
He's nodding no, for the record.
Oh, he's doing it for free. Thank you.
Well, not a percentage. That's,
Okay, so he's getting a fee to represent,
okay.
and I would imagine he will get well remunerated, providing he gets something for his clients. But all of that involves...
Folks, we can't go back and forth.
No, I'm sorry.
All right,
I don't
well,
know what I'm talking about.
You know,
on
Mr.
that.
Hangley, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
You're throwing out some, assumptions. So let's just stick to some facts.
Hearing all this talk,
Okay.
again, back to Mr. Steele. Villa Clara. My kids played in the house. The grandkids played in my house. When Mrs. Steele died, they have a chapel in the house. Mr. Steele sat honor guard in his military uniform over her corpse. This is something you can't destroy. The nature of that home, the memories of the Steele family, if there is a chance that it can remain in the family, whether or not Christina can swing this or not, I don't see how you guys would want to be the group that decided to tear down Villa Clara. That is there's a small station out front of this building in Kennedy Plaza where it shows historic architecture in Long Beach, and the Steele house is there. If you make the decision to tear down the house, they're going to have to take that down, and people will say, gee, that's sad, what happened? It doesn't make sense if there is a way for the family to hold on to this house. And obviously the lawyers all are right. If I listen to the 3 of them, they all know what they're talking about, they're experts at this. And I'm sure a lot of money is being eaten up just in the legal, but the fact is it's a home that with the right maintenance is a classic Long Beach home. If the developer puts in 2 3-story monstrosities, it's not in keeping with the neighborhood at all. We've got single-family homes. We're not FEMA compliant, a lot of us. We suffered with Sandy. I was with Mr. Steele the day after Sandy trying to get into his basement, which was, everybody's basement was underwater. It's just, I'm opposed to it strictly on a gut level. This is Long Beach. We don't need, this is Long Beach. We need to keep it Long Beach. This is a Long Beach family. This is a Long Beach house, a classic Long Beach house. Good luck, fellas.
Thank you.
And ladies.
All right, there's other folks, sir.
Emil Shadow, 660 Franklin Boulevard, Long Beach, New York. And so just to piggyback on the historic, and so I have one picture here as an artist. I've been at the house hundreds of times, and here we go. And if I can show you guys this one picture, yeah, just look at the artwork that Mrs. Steele handcrafted herself. I've taken many pictures at the house, and just something like that should not be torn down. That's all handmade. How someone, yeah.
There's no question about the fact that, you know, it's beautiful.
It's just
The question becomes, and at some point, perhaps, you know, maybe we can hear from Ms. Ryan. Mr. Smith, that would be okay with you, I guess? And maybe ask her some questions. I appreciate, you know, your sentiment. The other members of the board will have an opportunity. So duly noted, you're certainly against the destruction and demolition of the home because of its artistic value. All right, we'll hand you back the phone. If there's any, who was the next person that wanted to speak? Oh, hand down this way.
I see it.
Okay,
Can you-
thank you. Ma'am, all right, you've had your hand up. You can come up. We're gonna hear from Ms. Ryan in a little bit, if that's okay. Yeah, just relax a little bit. We'll have you come up in a little bit. I just want to hear from the other people because we'll probably generate some more maybe questions. What? I know.
Good evening, Karen Adamo, 74 Forester Street, Long Beach, New York. I am the president of the Long Beach Historical Society.
So I'm just gonna stop you for a second, Mr.
Okay.
Thomas. So I see that there are probably a number of members from the Historical Society, so.
But I don't think they're all going to speak.
Right, well, that's what I'm going to say. I'm going
Okay.
to say I would prefer if they were going to speak after you, since you are the president of the society, if they had anything in addition
Okay.
to add, I would like to hear them speak. If
Not
I'm just gonna
repetitive.
ask for a show of hands of who's going to echo what Mrs. Adamo is saying, all right?
I don't think they're going to.
Okay, all right, well.
I'm the spokesperson
Go ahead.
for the bunch.
That's what I want to know. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank Martha Ross. She was absolutely correct in explaining national landmarking. It is a nationally, federally landmark property under the auspice of the Department of Interior and Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
So it is a good standing. My main concern is some of the facts that have been, or supposed facts. I happen to know that the house was put on the market a year ago. It may have been before and then taken off. It's been on and off for a year. On the market, off the market. I have the dates here. October of 2001, it was on the market. March of 22, it was off the market. April of 22, back on the market. April 6th of 22, it comes out sale pending. So how could it be off the market and sale pending the same day? Okay, so as far as I know, it was not on the market for a year. It was basically on the market for a few months. Okay, so to say that it's been on the market for a year and a lot of people have had a chance to come purchase it is really not the case. The other part of it is that I personally want to know how much is owed with the mortgage and the back taxes and the legal fees and the trustees' fees. How much is really owed that this 1.2 will pay for?
We'll find that out.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because to me, I agree with, I'm sorry.
Mr. Smith.
Oh, that's easy enough. Mr. Smith, that's my mother's maiden name, by the way. That Mr. Smith said that they would probably come out with very little, and I agree, according to the costs involved.
Thrown
Right.
That may not cover all the other fees, though.
All the other fees. You've got attorney's fees, you've got trustees' fees that are going to come out of it, you've got possibly back taxes, I don't know. But it doesn't sound like very much is going to come from it. And the fact that these gentlemen, if they had to get out, could get Medicaid and be in a nursing home. So they're not going to be homeless. That's just to throw us off the track.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because my historic preservation's a little rusty. My understanding is that if it's on the federal list and documented by SHPO, by State Historic Preservation Office, then you cannot take it down without their approval. Isn't
Well,
that true?
actually, when we found that the house was going on, the Historical Society found that the house was going on the market, we immediately looked up the rules as best we could over and over. My archivist looked it up. We all researched it. Evidently, a residential private home can be renovated or taken down. If it were in a district, it would not be able to be taken down, or a public building, like our post office and Granada Towers. They cannot be taken down or renovated. If we could sell, if the Long Beach Historical Society could sell our building that the Board of Directors purchased, and we pay the mortgage and utilities, if we could sell that building for enough money to purchase the steel house, let them stay there, and make it a museum, we would do that. But the cost is exorbitant for us as well. But if we could get the funding somehow and make it a historical museum, they could live there as caretakers. I mean, it's just an idea, but I really feel for the family, and I think the family should be able to stay.
Okay.
And that's
Thank
all I
you.
have.
Now, in conjunction with Ms. Adamo,
Yes.
can I just have a show of hands for how many members of the Historical Society are here? Okay, so the record will show that there's, well, how many members? Keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so 10. Hands are coming up slowly. So there are approximately 10, 11, 12 hands from the Historical Society. And for the record, it would be safe to say that these 12 hands or so are echoing the sentiments of Ms. Adamo. Am I correct? Okay. If there was anything in addition, because we have other cases also we have to hear, then I would let someone come up and speak individually. But I think it's fair to say that these 12 other people are in complete agreement with Ms. Adamo. Would that be a fair statement, Ms. Adamo?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't speak for them.
All right, wait, please.
I would
Please.
agree
There's other
somewhat.
hands too. All right, so thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna give these two ladies have a chance. All right, could you just come up? No, you can't shout out from down back there. You gotta come up and give your name and address. It's gotta be on the record. Give us your name and address, please, and we want it on the record. And you can add to Ms. Adamos if you want. Try not to be
This is the 100th year of Long Beach as a city. Oh, I'm sorry. Phyllis Labuddy,
Okay.
Bob Jones Canal. I've been here for a very long time, but not as long as Long Beach has been a city. We are celebrating our 100th year. That house has been around for a very long time. And as a former teacher, Roberta Fiore, who founded the Long Beach Historical Society, used to take our classes to visit the old houses in Long Beach. And that house was part of the tour. It is a Long Beach treasure. It should be kept and preserved. But as far as I'm concerned, the only question here regarding our esteemed zoning board is whether or not to take a house down that is on one piece of property and put two houses on it. I don't know if you are familiar with the Mark Samuels house, the one on the corner of Blackheath Road. That was one beautiful home. It was sold, and they wanted to put 3 houses, but they put only 2. I ask you to go and look at those 2 houses. They are huge, They are boxes, they are unattractive, they have no character, and they will destroy Laurelton Boulevard if that's what you put there. So I appreciate all of the effort that you're putting in here, but please don't destroy the character of the Long Beach we all love by putting houses everywhere and subdividing and dividing and putting condos where they don't belong. We depend on you. You are the ones who are in charge of this community. It's probably the most important board that we have. So I trust you to take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was another hand. There was another hand right near you, Mrs. Labuddy. There was another hand right there, or no? None more. Mr. McQuaid, I see your hand is up. You want to come up?
Francis McQuaid from 573 Magnolia Boulevard. The house is a real piece of Long Beach. It's a house of love, also a house of faith. It's a working chapel there where Mass has been celebrated, a Rococo chapel to the Blessed Mother, which is really quite coveted. A cupola with the images of the grandchildren in the master bedroom. Just as Mr. Hangley has said, it's an instinct. There may be legal issues that have to be hashed out. But you are in a unique position to show heart and commitment to this community. We love that house. There's been an open door. I am opposed to the grant. However, not just the state opposition. If there is time that is bought through the litigation, my own commitment will be to rally many of the people who want to see the Via Clara stay, to start a foundation, a private foundation, to preserve that house and to assist the family in preserving that house, and furthermore ask our New York State legislators and our county representatives to consider historic preservation as well. If it takes a community, we're here. Please, let the Via Clara live.
Okay, thanks, Mr. McQuaid. There's a hand in the back, ma'am. You want to come up? Oh. Ms. Ford. Oh, okay.
Denise Ford, 36 Ohio Avenue. I normally don't come before this board on residential properties, but the Steele House is too important for me not to come and speak on behalf of it. I know that you are concerned about the brothers that are living there and what would happen to them based on the reverse mortgage, the finances, and all of that. And I would say that that is something, yes, that has to be considered in the absence of any other type of solution. But as you heard from Mr. Smith, and I had a lengthy conversation with him, as well as Christine, who reached out to me in the hopes of trying to get some justice for her family and to make sure that this house stays within their family. And Mr. Smith has indicated that she was already approved to be able to take over, to get the funding, to pay for a reverse mortgage. She is willing to sacrifice, to do whatever she can to make sure that that house stays in the family, that it is not a financial ruin, that she can pay for it, and that both of our uncles can stay there, as Mr. Steele, who we all know, loved his sons and loved that house, and that he would want his sons to stay there as well. Mr. Smith also indicated to you that there also is with the surrogate court. I mean, is it the surrogate court or am I confusing? The Supreme Court, I'm sorry, Judge Gugarty. In the Supreme Court, with the fact that Mr. Gusweiler has been named as a guardian for Charles. And the fact is that he cannot be here tonight. And I think that before any decision is made, you must allow him to speak, but you must allow also to give this time for the courts to decide whether or not they are going to come up with a new trustee. Are they going to, what do they need, any further consideration that has to be made on behalf of Charles and with the family. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm just spouting things out. But I think that but I ask that perhaps if you at least table this until a later date, to allow this to run through the courts, to allow everything to be settled, so that you have a clearer picture of what needs to be done. And I have to say, Mr. Alton, thank you very much for speaking about, the fact of the cost of what they want to sell this property for. I live in Long Beach. I mean, I remember when I first moved here, I could have gotten a house for $35,000, and that was in 1980. And we've seen house prices go up. My son bought a house in the West End, 30 by 60 property, and it needs a lot of work. And that house sold for $550,000. To find that this house that is on the bay, with the size of the property that is and the house that it is, that it's going to be sold for $1.25 million, unless I'm wrong, I just think there's something wrong with that also. I think that it's something that we need to take a pause. We need to start looking at everything and really look to see what has been going on with this property and with this family. Let's not rush. There is no need to rush, whether or not even with foreclosure, and I will speak with Christina to make sure that perhaps she can reach out to the Bar Association, because they do give, they provide legal help when people are facing foreclosure on properties. We can also take a look at whether or not the Steele brothers, I know that I don't know their financial situation. I have no personal knowledge of anything that they can do. But perhaps maybe we could look with the county to see, are they entitled to any other type of services? Is there any other type of financial help that we can give them? Let us help work with them to exhaust any possibility to allow them maybe the opportunity to be able to stay in the house that they've lived in for so long. And if they do choose to decide that Robert wants to move, then let him make that decision. Let Charlie make the decision to stay. But let's not leave it to you. And I respect all of you, but respect this family, and let's just consider the outcome. Let's just think what will happen to Charlie if he's forced out of a house that he knows and the neighborhood that he loves. And I ask you, please, side with the family. Let's not subdivide this property. Let's keep it for now until Christina can find out and maybe get this property and get rid of the reverse mortgage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Good evening. Doug Shear. I've lived at 734 East Chester Street for 70 years. I'm the president of the Long Beach Island Landmarks Association, and I want you to know that year after year we gave trolley tours of the Villa Clara, and it was on the request of the Steele family that we went there and brought 25 people in a trolley, and he greeted us at the door, and his only wish was to share the beauty of that house and the history of it, because it was so important to him and really to the people of Long Beach. If you have pride in Long Beach, it's more than that saying about having sand in your shoes. It has to do a lot with the pride in our history. And one of the pillars of that history is Villa Clara. On the corner of West Bay Drive in Laurelton, there isn't another house like that. And when you make a decision tonight, or whatever that decision may be, and if it is to divide that lot, you know that that's the end of the house, and that piece of Long Beach history will be gone forever. And we can't have that because we don't have that many houses that share that sense of our past. So so many people here are supporting the Steele family and imploring you to fall on the side of caution and say it's a piece of property that has history that Long Beach enjoys, has enjoyed, and wants to do the same in the future. And
Okay.
it's up to you to make that
Thank you,
decision
sir.
the right way. Thank you.
One hand all the way in the back.
My name is Erica Dodana. I'm in enemy territory. I live in Oceanside, 2704 Harrison Avenue. I know the family. I've known Christina for many years now. And you were asking me about her uncles and her family. Christina has changed her entire life. She lives for her family. Christina does everything for her family. Her grandfather meant everything to her and their family. Please don't destroy her house. She is willing to do what it takes to support her uncles, and they will be in the best hands with Christina and her family. She is a person that will do anything for you, and she will take care of her uncles the way that her grandfather wanted. And please don't destroy that house, because it means a lot to this family. And that's
Thank
all I
you.
wanted to say.
You know, I think at this point, I'd like to hear from Christina herself, if that's possible. All right, because I think that we certainly have gotten the sentiment from everyone in the audience. You know, we live in town too. We know the house, and we understand here. And so now, you know, a lot of things have been said about, you know, Christina's abilities and, you know, what Christina wants to do. So I think since she is here, it would be best if we heard from Christina.
I'm not a good public speaker.
You don't have to be. I'm not either. So go ahead, please. Give us your name and address. And
Okay, Oceanside, 3356 Oceanside. I am Dan Steele's granddaughter. When he passed away, he had clearly written in his trust.
so there are two sons, and you are the daughter of another son? The granddaughter.
Yes.
So now your father is one of the two brothers? No.
My mom. No, my mom.
Right. So there were two brothers and one mom and one woman.
Correct.
I get it.
And
Okay.
they needed assistance their whole life, especially my Uncle Charles.
Okay.
Hence was the reason for the guardian.
Okay.
And he asked that I move in and take over the property. He knew it might be a battle within the family, so he was told that putting it in a trust and not appointing a family member would be the best idea for him.
Okay.
And not one trustee, but two trustees and three trustees. When he passed away, I went right to Walter Belling, and he kept mentioning that was a prime piece of property, and I said that, no, this is supposed to stay in the family. I sat down with Mr. Vanover, and I presented him with all of the financial papers that show that I could take over the property, that I would take
You had gotten an approval, Christina, for?
I had pre-approval.
Okay.
With Wells Fargo.
Okay.
I showed him all that, that we had the finances to do it, that we had the help to restore, repair the home, and I was told absolutely not. Despite him not knowing the conditions.
What did that mean? Absolutely not.
That
He,
is-
as trustee, told you that,
Yes,
right?
It was absolutely not.
I understand.
It was not going to happen. And I said, but this is what he wanted. And his exact words were, your grandfather's wishes do not matter. Exact words. Didn't offer to see how we could make this work. Didn't care that my uncles that have been there forever were going to be displaced. And one of my uncles is definitely on the spectrum. He is terrified right now that he's being pushed out of his home. My other uncle, who I had a wonderful relationship with, is now saying, I'm a monster, because Mr. Kelly told him that he's going to get money and a house, and I'm taking that from him, and I have documentation of that as well. So now I have these two uncles who were terrified to leave their home, that did not want to leave their home, and I'm being told no, despite showing I had the resources to, despite saying that I would do whatever I could in my power. I was served with eviction papers. I don't live at the home.
Now, were you considering moving into the house? I think that there was some mention of that,
I
too.
considered moving in immediately, and I was told by Walter Belling, or maybe it was Mr. Vanover, I'm not sure, that I had to have a court order. When we had talked about saying that we wanted to move in, I was served with eviction papers so that I wouldn't move in. He knew what he was doing. It was my time and it was my money. So here I am, almost $40,000 later, that I could have put into the home, fighting an eviction for a property I don't live in. My grandfather's voice has been taken away. My voice has been taken away, and my uncle's voices have been taken away. So much so, I had to get him a guardian, because I know what they're doing to him right now. We have had zero say in this. The house can be repaired. I've had contractors reach out to me. I've had people in the community reach out to me and say that they would help. Okay, there are grants that can be made, or grants that you can apply for, to help fix this home. There are many resources. Is it going to happen overnight? No. But can we preserve it? Absolutely. Can we keep my uncles in their home? Yes. And I will not allow them to go to a nursing home. Absolutely not. That is their home. And by the time you're said and done, there's not going to be enough money for them. My grandfather lived till 90 years old. Where are you putting them? Why would you take them out of their home? I don't understand. And for the life of me, it didn't make sense until I found out that he is a broker at Fresh Start Properties. He's going to get a cut. So it makes sense. So my grandfather's wishes, their American dream, my grandmother who came here from another
country, maybe they don't matter to you, but they matter to us, and they matter to him, and they should matter to all of you.
Thank you. All right, I think at this point, thank you, Christina. We've heard, enough testimony from the audience. We did say we were going to give a rebuttal from Mr. Vinicor, if you wanted to come up for a few minutes. Certainly the board is not making any decisions tonight. So if you had a few questions that you wanted to answer, a lot of things were said.
I'd like to clarify a few things. Can I just ask you a question quick? A lot of information has been flowing tonight. The one question I have is if the granddaughter had the financial means and capability of taking care of the reverse mortgage and she brought this offer to you, why didn't you accept it? When this offer was brought, I was very clear to them that I cannot sell them this house for under market value, but because of my fiduciary duty to the beneficiaries, but go into court if you'd like, and if the court orders me to do this sale, I'm fine. I'm not breaching any fiduciary duty. Mind you, Mr. Steele died in 2020, April. It's now September of 2022. And it's not just satisfying the reverse mortgage, it would also be, it's not just satisfying the reverse mortgage, it's also showing that they have the wherewithal to repair the house, they have the wherewithal to pay for the taxes on this house, besides just saying and the wherewithal to pay off the new mortgage that they'll be, I would think, refinancing to pay off the reverse mortgage. All these things have not been presented. I cannot sell this house for $600,000, which is what the reverse mortgage was then, without breaching my fiduciary duty as trustee when the asset's worth over $1 million, unless a court advised me so. That is what I told them. The only thing they did in that 2.5 years was ultimately went in for a guardianship. The guardianship was appointed over the over the property of Charles Steele. Mr. Gershweiler is the attorney for Mr. Steele. Mr. Gershweiler was in Long Beach tenant court, landlord-tenant court, along with Mr. Kelly and I on May 18th, where it was stipulated that we could enter into the warrant of eviction, staying it until we have the variance, we have the money to move them to another place. So from my perspective, the attorneys for the two family members that everyone's talking about agreed to this, realizing that there's no other hope for them. Now, as far as what's going to be left over after we satisfy the mortgage, should be $500,000 to $600,000. It's not chump change. It's substantial money that we can give them housing.
Now, I have a question for you, sir. But from what Mr. Smith said, should not that matter have been deferred by the court in Long Beach, the city court, to Supreme?
No, I disagree with that. The order itself says to act as legal representative for and counsel to Charles Steele in connection with the eviction proceedings against Charles Steele in the Long Beach City Court of Long Beach. He had permission to represent him here. He's also, as the guardian, the person who needs to go to the court and advise the court, ask the court permission to relocate Mr. Steele. It's not my responsibility, it's the guardian's responsibility. But to say that Mr. Gershweiler knew nothing about it is absurd. He was standing here in court.
With respect to what the young lady, granddaughter, I'm sorry, I don't recall her name, Christine, excuse me, she had mentioned, did she say that you were a broker with a real estate broker with the firm?
I am not the listing broker. I will not get any money from the sale.
But when we did ask you what your relationship was, you did fail to say that.
I told them I work with them.
You said you had a working relationship.
Thank you. Can I ask a question, because you've implied several times that the house, the only way that the brothers, which I'm assuming you're a fiduciary for the brothers, pretty much, right?
That's correct.
So if you're a fiduciary for the brothers and a family member is coming up and saying that she has the ability to keep the brothers in the home as a family member. Did you suggest anything like maybe the loan should be put in their names and your name, so that way, you know, with her being the surviving heir to the brothers, if that's so be it? Did you offer any options that basically said they can stay in the house and we don't have to sell it because you have a loan that's available to you? Now, two more people on that same loan will still have the same, even if they have zero income, would still have the same ability to carry that loan, right? I mean, I'm assuming two additional people would still not negate her credit or your credit line. So did you offer as a fiduciary for those two brothers that this is an option that's available to you, just put their two names on the mortgage as well, so that it stays in their name, it stays in the family's name?
They can't add their name to a mortgage once it's in default.
What I'm saying is she has the ability to get a mortgage, right?
Well, we were told that. We were never presented with any of the paperwork to show, as I said, the financials, that they have the money to do this.
I was asking, did you speak to them about options, since you represent the brothers?
The answer is yes. They had a couple of other attorneys prior to Mr. Smith. They all were coming to us with ideas of how we could refinance this. We could keep the property in the trust, refinance it in the name of the trust, you'll sign off. Okay. Never heard about it again. So until someone gives me something in paper to review, I've got nothing.
So you've never seen the mortgage commitment that she has currently?
Never seen a mortgage commitment.
Well, I don't think there was a commitment, though, because I think she said she was pre-approved.
She said she's pre-approved.
Pre-approved.
She just...
You know what? Let's not go, hold on. Let's not go back and forth.
Okay.
So let him finish what he was going to say. We'll have you come back up again. Go ahead. You can finish up.
What was the question?
I'm curious I'm also curious about the market part of it. I'm hearing it was on the market for a year and you couldn't get any buyers.
It wasn't on the market for a year.
So now I'm
7
hearing
months.
that it went on and off and on and off and on and off. I know that I spoke personally to somebody looking for an historic home in Long Beach who I mentioned that house, and they said they called and they was told, no, we can't show it, it's sale pending. And we're also talking about it being sold in a COVID environment, which also very much restricted flow. So I don't know if I think it got a fair crack at what the real market could offer.
It was on the market for 7 months. I'm facing with losing...
Why on and off?
Excuse me?
Why on and off?
I have no knowledge of it going off.
And sale pending?
Excuse me? Sale pending is when we entered into the contract.
Oh, so that's with the developer, but that's like a profit-making endeavor. Okay.
That's
gotcha.
when it got taken off listing.
Right. Okay.
And that would have been April of 2022.
Okay.
In addition to the vast legal issues that are surrounding this, I don't know whether or not we even have authority to vote.
We don't.
Based on the Supreme Court order. I have to review it. I just received this when we all received it. Okay. I haven't even reviewed it.
The Supreme Court order...
I do not know that. If they should not. I do not believe we can vote on this.
No.
The Supreme Court order says that they need to be notified and any move by Charles Steele needs to be approved. Mr. Gershel can do that, but he hasn't done that because right now we can't sell this property until there's a variance.
As legal counsel to the board, I have to review it and make sure that they're not doing anything incorrect. I haven't had an opportunity to really review it.
Fair enough.
So, Mr. Benoit, I have a question regarding your position as the fiduciary for Charles and Robert Steele. How do they feel about this?
Well, you heard...
Have they been presented with that their niece wants to do what she wants to do?
They have.
And what do they want to do?
Well, as you heard Dennis Kelly speak, his client does not want Christina moving into the house with him.
Would you know why?
Well, let's have her tell us.
I have
Okay, so...
How about Robert Steele?
Excuse me?
How about Robert? How about Robert Steele?
Charles Steele.
Charles.
Charles.
Robert Steele is Dennis Kelly's client.
Okay, Robert is the one that doesn't
Charles
want this
Steele is
to
the
happen.
other son.
Right, so how about
Right.
Charles?
Mr. Gershler represented him in Long Beach landlord-tenant court. And it was agreed upon that the best interest for his client would be to move out of that environment for numerous reasons, financially, and the condition of the house isn't healthy to live in.
But was it presented to him, and I'll ask Mr. Kelly if it was presented to Robert, the plan that Christina has, where they would be able to stay in the house, live within the house with family, and not worry about any other mortgage ever again.
They were advised about it. Robert Steele does not want that arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
And Charles Steele's attorney consented to the eviction. So I would assume he also, at that point in time, understood, not a pretty picture. No one's saying we want to knock down this house for any other reason, but I'm in foreclosure here. I've got $600,000, $700,000 I've got to pay. This goes on another year, there's another $100,000 that's not going to go into my client's trust. At the end of the day, I don't know what will be left. But
If your
right
clients
now,
wind
if we
up
could sell this house within a few months, we'll have $500,000 to $600,000.
If your clients wind up in a nursing home, they would take all the money anyway.
No, they wouldn't. The money's in a trust. It's not their money.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Would you like to come back up? I have a couple of questions. All right, so we understand that there's some sort of disagreement in the family, which may or may not be really any of our, decision-making information. But the question is, was it true that Mr. Robert Steele did not want this arrangement anymore?
No, it actually was not. Initially, he was all for the arrangement, and he did not want to leave his home until his daughter, and this gets very complicated, hired Dennis Kelly. And his exact words were, and he said this in court, he's entitled to money, that this is his money. And he thought, and he thinks, he's getting money. Otherwise, he was happy to stay home. Charlie does not want to leave either. So that is absolutely 100% false up until the lawyer was hired. And in his mind, he thinks that I am seeking his inheritance and he's going to get a debit card and a home. He has no idea. Even though we tried to explain it to him at this point, there's not that much I can do for him. I've tried to clearly explain it, but now in his mind, he is getting this big payday. He doesn't understand.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of money is coming off the top.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Shokran, you want to come up? You said you have your hand up. And I think after that, we're going to move this case along. We're going to go on to the next case. It remains open until voting. If anyone wants to submit any additional information for us to consider, any documentation, any personal letters, we will entertain that before the board votes. Again, most importantly, as chairman of the board, I must defer to council to make sure that we even do have the jurisdiction to vote on this case while it's still in the courts. So we may have to wait for something to be handed down to us from Supreme or from the guardianship court, it would be too, letting us know if in fact we could even go forward with a vote. Mr. Shokran, please.
One document that I forgot to submit to the court is the zoning resolution in regard to 416 West Bay Drive, which there was a house on that block which had applied for the subdivision into 2 pieces of property, and the board has approved it. So there is a precedent. I only have one copy for the board.
All right.
One point that Commissioner Lees, or you Commissioner Brooks? Lees. Commissioner Lees brought up, and I don't think that has been explained clearly. The fact that the granddaughter is willing to come up with $600,000 to pay off the reverse mortgage, does it mean that now she takes the position of the bank in regard to the property? Now she would be the one who would put a lien for $600,000 on the house rather than $1,250,000 which is being offered. The question is, what do brothers get out of this? In other words, in reality, she becomes the owner of the house for only $600,000 for paying off the reverse mortgage. But that...
There's still another mortgage, though, she would have to take another mortgage or no?
$600,000 or $650,000 is owed on the house. Okay. She claims that she could come up with that money, probably from another bank, to pay off this bank. But then now then I'm sure after that, she's the one who would, or the other bank is the one who puts the lien on the house. Who becomes the owner of the house?
The beauty with law is that you could, as a trustee, you could pretty much write anything into that contract that you want. I mean, you could basically make it a conditional sale with various conditions, right?
I'm not sure I understand
So that the brothers are protected. So if you're saying, what do the brothers get out of it? They get to stay in the house, and their fiduciary legal representative should be able to protect their interests in the sale of the house to Denise, right?
But is it the fact
It's
that
just a
then
question.
she becomes the eventual owner of the house for only $600,000?
How much would you make out of that house?
But the question, well, the
May
question would be,
I
though-
answer your question,
Wait a minute,
please?
wait a
Could you
minute.
please ask
The
that
brothers,
question?
if the brothers continued living in the house, though, realistically, they don't have income. So somebody would have to be paying for them to be continuing to live in that house. So even though she purchased the home for $650,000, let's say they're 72 and they live another 20 years, she would have been basically putting them up for free for 20 years. So in a way, they'd be getting their money, but they'd be getting it over a 20-year
In
period.
services, yes.
And services.
And in rent.
And that's the thing. The thing is that they have this trust that, yes, they're gonna not net a profit, but it sounds to me like one of the brothers, Robert, wants his inheritance now. That's how it seems to me. And the thing is that the other brother, for whatever medical reasons or, maybe mental reasons, is not able to do the same that Robert can, because it sounds like Robert takes care of Charles, is that, maybe one brother just wants his money. And I understand that. He has the right to have that. But the fact that she is getting the house, or potentially, Mr. Shokri could get the house for $650,000, she's not responsible for that mortgage, but they're getting free room and board for possibly another 20 years. Because if they're 72, Mr. Steele lived till 90, and there are many people that are living till 90, these days. She could be potentially stuck with them for 20-something years, both of them. So I know what you're saying. I agree with what you just said, that she's getting the house maybe a bargain basement price that could be worth 1.2. But in the long run, it's going to cost her a lot of money over and above the mortgage, I think.
But in addition, I just wanted to add, and if this is the case, if there's a trust and she has the remainder interest in the trust, there are 2 life estates for the brothers, and then after the brothers pass, the remainder interest would go to her, she would get the house. So this would be totally in line with the trust. Because in any case, when the brothers passed, if this reverse mortgage wasn't there, when the brothers passed, then the house would go to her afterwards. So it's pretty much the same exact thing, except she's paying the $600,000 and keeping the trust in effect.
Yeah.
I have a question for
She's a lot younger than 70, so chances are she's going to outlive the brothers by a good margin.
I have a question, Mr. Shokri, but it would be better suited, I believe, for Mr. Benoker. May I ask you
Sure.
a quick question, please? Thank you. Mr. Benoker. Yes. How reverse mortgages are designed so that they don't go into foreclosure. How is it that they're in foreclosure with a reverse mortgage?
A reverse mortgage goes into foreclosure or default automatically upon the death of the borrower and needs to be satisfied within 3 to 6 months before the bank have the right
So it was
to start a
Daniel
foreclosure.
Steele who had the reverse mortgage?
Yes. What happened is Daniel Steele did this trust. He wanted to take care of his kids. He wanted his kids to live there. Then what did he do 2 years later? He took out a reverse mortgage.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought it was under there.
That's it. Mr. Shokri, that's it, right?
Just
You didn't
one
want
correction because you were
anything
saying.
else? That was it? No, you didn't want to say anything else, right?
No.
Okay. All right, so folks, this case is going to remain open for voting. Again, any submissions directly to the Secretary of the Board, and we're going to move on with the next case.
Is everyone leaving? Just please, kind of see if people are leaving, it's gonna be loud as all hell. Do you need to break or anything? Okay.
Case number 331. Okay, yeah. It's just the calendar.
Folks, can we just if anybody's exiting, can we just be a little respectful on the way out, please?
Case number 3316, application of Bright Eye Beer Company of 50 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.15B front yard, 9-105.15C rear yard, 9-105.15E height, 9-106.14 general provisions, 9-112.16 off-street parking, for a second floor event space with full bar at 50 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 84, Lot 13, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Dennis G. Kelly, 120 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, 11561. Here on behalf of my client, Bright Eye Beer Company. You may recall a couple of years ago, it was this board that gave my client the variances by which he was able to open Bright Eye. You'll also remember, if I'm talking too fast, tell me. You'll also remember that I had Mr. Hennigan address the board, and he did so eloquently, telling you exactly what he was going to do, and he did exactly what you permitted him to do, and I think he's done a good job at it. I'd like to say that I think it's really it's a much better look and fixture to the community than what we had after the Five and Dime closed. I was hoping that Mr. Gallinaro would be able to join me by this point this evening, but he had teacher-parent conferences over at the high school for the first time this year, and he had to attend those. I will have Mr. Hennigan address you again this evening in order to tell you why this came up and what the thought is behind it and what he intends to do. First, I think perhaps the best thing we can do is look at the plans. It will be a second floor additional space in which there's 3 different areas, one being 904 square feet that can accommodate up to 60 people. Another space is 999 square feet that can accommodate 67 people. And then there's a bar as well that can accommodate 15 people. The calculation, given the number of people who can fit into the space upstairs, including the downstairs occupancy, will require, I believe, by the building department standards, 66 off-street parking spaces, of which you know we have none. So we do have abundant parking in the area, as we've discussed in the past concerning this particular application. If you look at the second floor, the east side, which would be the top of the drawing, will consist of couches and chairs, and that's the 999 square foot area that can accommodate the number of people I've just referenced. In the middle is the 904 square foot area, which has tables and chairs as well. And on the west side will be the bar, which can accommodate 15 people. There's 2 means of ingress and egress, and you see that by the installation of a stairway in the back, which will be in addition to the existing stairs that are already in the front, which would be on the left side of the plans. The windows that we look at that are very tiny with the awnings on them outside will be enlarged and just made wider openings to allow in some light and give it a prettier look to the building. There will be an elevator capable of obviously bringing people from the first floor to the second floor. The space will be devoted simply to private parties and special events, and like I said, I'll have Mr. Hennigan address how this arose and what is intended by events and private parties. There will be obviously a full sprinkler system. There'll be no food served upstairs unless it's catered or brought in, as is the case with the first floor presently. I have never attended Bright Eye Beer Company, but my children have, and they're in their 30s and late 20s. And they use it to socialize and to bring food in. And I haven't heard of any complaints concerning Bright Eye Beer Company. I asked Mr. Hennigan if we've had any police issues, and there have been none. I've asked him if he's heard any specific complaints, either as to noise or parking or any other issue, and he has it. There will be as well new bathrooms on the second floor. And I think, from my perspective, that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, so Mr. Keller, just, I'll ask Mr. Hennigan, but from what you know right now, just briefly, right now this is used as storage, I would imagine?
Yes, I believe so, but
Okay.
Mr. Hennigan would be better
And you
answer
mentioned
that.
an elevator, right? Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there an elevator at present, or this would be part of
I
the
don't
renovation?
believe so, and I don't believe there's bathrooms upstairs either.
Okay. So they'd be installing handicap bathrooms and an elevator?
Yes, it looks like if you see on the right side of the plan,
And then also, do you know, or will I ask Mr. Hennigan, what defines an event? You know, we're talking about, you know, I'm assuming we're talking private parties, but we're not, are we talking, you know, bands, comedy stuff, you know, like nights, theme nights?
right.
What would
I will let him address
constitute an
that, but
event? Let Mr. Hennigan.
I see the question and the concern.
Right, all right. Mr. Hennigan, you want to come up? How are you? So give us your name and address, please.
Hey guys, Luke Hennigan, 124 West Hudson, representing Bright Eye Beer Co.
Okay. You're the owner?
Co-owner, yeah, Kieran,
Okay.
Molly,
So,
my
well, you
co-owner.
can speak for them. So now the question, as I was starting to ask Mr. Kelly, these are specific questions that, you know, you would want to answer. So right now, Bright Eye, what are the regular hours of operation? Is it considered like a bar facility, even though it's a brewery? Are you open till like 4 a.m. or no?
No, sir, no.
Okay.
Weekdays we're closed at 10, and weekends we'll stay open late as midnight. 12.
Okay. Now, the question is, as I asked Mr. Kelly, there's no elevator service right now, and there are no bathrooms upstairs because clearly it's storage, and obviously, if you're building a new facility, you're going to have handicap accessible, and you have to go up there. So, what constitutes events? You know, is it? I mean, I don't know if you do a wedding up there, but would you do, because of the food, you know, you have to cater it. But what would be like an event, like a corporate party, or what would you call
Yeah,
an
we
event?
get a lot of requests for, you know, baby showers,
Okay.
birthday parties, 40th, 50th, 30th
Okay.
birthday parties.
The other question is, would you have as events like, because I know there might be some neighbors that are going to come up in opposition or whatever behind. Are you going to have as an event, like would you have, let's say, like a comedy night on Thursdays and something else on Wednesdays and something else on Tuesdays? So would you have, let's say, regular nights of like entertainment or whatever as events?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, that's not primarily what the space is for. I don't want to say we're not, because we actually have a comedy night planned in
Right.
October.
Did I give you an idea?
Yeah.
I planted the
But,
seed, huh?
But primarily.
You already have that plan for the first floor.
Yeah, that's for the first
Yeah.
floor. So
Okay.
nothing different in terms of larger, you know.
Because once in a while on the first floor you do have music, right? You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
music.
definitely. Yeah, that's part of it.
And basically, you're operating more along the lines of a restaurant, really, in terms of the hours, and not a classic, let's say, bar.
Yeah.
You know, it's more of a, you know, like I would imagine like a brewery, or let's say a wine tasting place, you know, where you go out, let's say the North Fork, those places kind of roll up the carpet, you know, early evening, they're closed. So it doesn't sound like it's a bar operation, nor has it been.
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay, so my question would be though, since, and Mr. Kelly, you probably be best to answer this, the concern obviously of the board would be, so, you know, Mr. Hennigan runs a nice operation, you know, Jay Hennigan's is in the family too, right? That's you guys also, right?
Yes.
And that's a great place, I mean, you know, but the question would be, let's just say that, you know, Mr. Hennigan and his partners, they got tired of it, they flipped it, they sold it one day. Could it be out of the realm of possibility that because they do have a liquor license, am I correct?
Yes.
That the next owner would want to turn that into, like, let's say, a full-service bar, like some of the other bars along Park Avenue, that would be open till 4 o'clock. Technically, that could happen, right? Because this would
Yeah.
run with the
Technically, we have a farm brewer's license. I don't know if that would transfer as easily to a full-blown liquor license, but ours is a brewery license that allows for New York State.
That's
That's correct, and I honestly don't know if the SLA would recognize a full beer and wine license or a full liquor
Full brewery.
license as a result of the brewery license.
Okay.
They've given a lot of deference because they've encouraged this industry.
Right, right. No, I know. I remember when we heard the original case. But because I know the state was trying to promote this. Yeah, I remember it when we heard the case well. But the question would be, then just for clarification, of my own clarification, a beer brewery license does not automatically extend to wine, or does not automatically extend to hard liquor, right?
Right, well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get you the answer.
Yeah, because that would be, because I know I'm trying to probably think of what other concerns might be, because it seems to me, from my understanding, from having read this previously, is that a beer brewery license is not a full liquor license. You know, it doesn't automatically grant the owner permission to start serving other types of liquor other than beer, maybe even wine,
Excuse-
maybe not even wine.
I believe a farm brewer's license is allowed to sell farm liquor and farm wine in their facility as long as it's New York State farm licensed liquor and New York State farm licensed wine. That's that permitted.
Now, so Mr. Hennigan, so basically then, you're gonna continue the same operation that you have now. You know, clearly, parking is something that, you know, we can't do anything about. I know there is a parking lot across the street that people can avail themselves of. I mean, I know that your operation, I have seen bicycles in front of the place, you know, people coming in. So I don't have any further questions right now. You've answered my questions as far as, you know, where we're going with the operation on this. Other members of the board?
I just want to confirm from Mr. Kelly, the front yard variance, rear yard variance, and the height are all existing non-conforming, right?
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay, so let's speak to the audience. People in favor, anybody want to, sorry, come up. You're in favor, right? Oh, no, I want in favor first. We'll give you a couple of minutes, you know. I don't think it's gonna be that long. Come on up, in the back, You are in favor, Mr. Lynch, you're in favor. Correct, you're in favor?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You're in favor, right?
I am in favor.
All right, sir.
Although I always find that thing to be kind of crazy, whether people want, sometimes people are just looking for information, and they're not for or against it.
Right.
And I've always said that.
You have to give your name and address.
I will. You started the conversation. All right. James Lynch, here representing the Chamber of Commerce, 350 National, right down the block, neighbors of Bright Eye Brewery. We are in favor of this application, and I would just say that I guess they started about 3 years ago with their build-out, and then ran into a pandemic head-on after maybe a month in business. They have been great stewards of Park Avenue and Long Beach itself in the community. They're involved in just about everything. They hold many fundraisers, and they keep a nice shop. All one has to do is look out the window and see how beautiful it is. And they're exactly what we need when we see businesses like this open up. And I think that this board should be in favor of this. They've proven their business abilities, and as you said, there's no calls for service there whatsoever. They run a nice shop.
Okay.
So I would ask, and to that, without objection, only because I know supply chain issues are still a problem, and the faster that they can get going on this project would be better for them. So if the board was willing to vote on it tonight, that would be great too.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There was another hand in favor.
Welcome, Mr. Lees.
Yeah, back there, there was a hand in favor.
Karen Adamo, 74 Forester Street, and I'll be fast. I want to just reiterate what James just said. They have done wonderful things for the community. They're a very good business owner, And they've done a lot of fundraisers. Just about any organization in town that comes to them and asks them for help with some sort of a fundraiser. They have also put up artists, local artists' work in the building. And I believe Mr. Hennigan when he says he's going to follow the rules, so I vouch.
I'm just curious.
Uh-huh.
Just a quick aside question,
Uh-huh.
since I know you're involved in history. When that building was the old five
McClellan's?
and dime, I know it doesn't have historical status, obviously, but they did try to maintain the flavor
Mhm.
of the 5 and 10 cents.
Yes.
Right.
The tin roof and, you still have the tin roof.
No, they took the tin roof down.
No, you took it down?
I like the
So
tin
it's not
roof.
historical, forget it.
They
Okay.
took the wood, the sawdust off the floors.
All right.
But they did a nice job with the beams.
They did a
Thank
beautiful
you.
job.
All right.
And they redid the McClellan sign.
Yes.
And put it out front.
Thank you. Yes, in the back. No, sir, there's one more in favor, please. Yeah.
Good evening, Elena Tutrone. I live at 185 West Park Avenue. I'm a full-time teacher. However, I work part-time at Bright Eye. So I'm a little biased, but I do want to echo, excuse me?
A little?
A little, but I want to echo what has just been said. These are the most generous bosses I've ever worked for, and not only do they support all the local fundraisers, but because we don't have a kitchen there, we support the local restaurants because people are bringing in restaurant, you know, Gino's. We have like
get
you know,
it.
Gino's Pizza Boxes at the end of the night.
I remember
So anyway,
the first hearing when we voted
Yeah.
on it. That was part of the deal.
so and you know the upstairs, if it were to bring catering in, I'm sure would support local restaurants as well.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that again, they are the best people to work for, and I've worked for a lot of people, and you know the community really loves Bright Eye, and there is a beer actually that's a very popular one called the Five and Dime.
Okay.
So there's where we have you know kept that legacy going.
Thank you. Very good. There was one other hand, and then I know that, okay, that's it. All right, in favor. Sir, you want to come up against? No, it's all right. I understand. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Came early, but.
Just
okay,
name and address, please.
Benjamin Perry Schaffler, 55 West Walnut Street.
Okay.
Okay. And I sent in a petition from.
So you live behind?
I live behind, and I have the signature of 16 neighbors who live both directly behind.
So let the
and
record
across
show
the
that
street.
there's a petition
So,
here.
yeah.
Are they all from the block?
Well, I sent it already, but I. Got it. Okay. But can I look at it while I'm?
All right, so they're all West Walnut on that block. Okay. Trying to get people from Connecticut and stuff. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
My wife called to remind me to go pick up my kid. Okay, so basically, I mean, we heard, I talked to old neighbors, we heard really nice things about, one of them is friends with the owner of Bright Eyes, and very nice things about the owner of Bright Eyes, but Bright Eyes, that's not our concern. Very nice people, do nice things for the community, but, you know, we live right behind there, and if you add an event space behind, it means a lot more people walking around the neighborhood, and if you have people and alcohol and more parking problems and potentially more noise, also when you have an event space, you could have bands playing there, you can have all kinds of things, and everybody means well, but you know there could be and we live right behind it, and if you build in a full bar into first of all, an event space means a lot of people, and that's a concern, and the noise and so on, people walking around the neighborhood, possibly inebriated and so on, and then also parking. And then the other thing is that, you know, you put in a full bar, they could apply for a regular liquor license and change the hours and so on. And even if the people right there are the best people on earth, which they seem to really be, and an asset to the community, once something is set up in a certain way, the stewards might not always be the same stewards the next year and so on. And we are concerned about having an event space with a full bar and without extra parking and so on right behind our homes. We have a petition that says all the particulars. If there's anything you want to ask me, I have to run, so I'll be glad to
No,
answer.
go ahead. No, you said, no, we understand. We saw the petition, the names are all on Walnut Street, so
Yeah.
we can verify that.
Right
Thank you very much.
I've got a
Have
question for
good
you though,
evening.
sir. Have there been events recently that have disturbed your neighborhood in particular, or are you just concerned about the growth of it?
I have any complaints particular about bright eyes, and I can't limit out which is which. I know that their anchor bar has been causing problems to the neighbors in terms of.
That has a couple of levels.
Well, they have big bands,
Right,
yeah.
right.
I understand.
And so the neighbors on that side have had, problem, but all the neighbors expressed the same concern with the exception of one who's a friend of the owner and another person who didn't want to be represented because she used to be on the board, on the zoning board. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good night. Anyone else against? Okay. The case, it could remain open until voting, or, if somebody's gonna make a motion, is anybody looking to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to allow it. I would second.
I'll second.
Okay. Case number
I
3316.
don't see delaying this for a month changing the facts that were presented to us.
I would second.
Okay. Case number 3316, application of Bright Eye Beer Company of 50 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.15B front yard, 9-105.15C rear yard, 9-105.15E height, 9-106.14 general provisions, 9-11216 off-street parking for a second floor event space with full bar at 50 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 84, Lot 13, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Commissioner Alton has introduced a motion to grant the application. Commissioner Lees has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Grant.
Commissioner Lees?
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
Chairman Morelli?
Grant.
This application has been granted.
Good luck.
Okay, next one. Case number 3317, application of 77 Lease Corp., care of Robert Lindholm of 64 Michigan Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5M subdivision for subdividing a 60 by 60 parcel into two 30 by 60 parcels at 64 Michigan Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 58, Block 99, lots 22 to 23 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening, Mr. Kelly.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Dennis G. Kelly, 120 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, 11561. On behalf of my clients, Robert and Barbara Lindholm, who own the two properties. Actually, they don't own the properties. A trust owns one. Well, a trust is involved with one. I'll describe this better later. But first, let me just describe the properties and what our hope is and a little history, and then I'll ask Barbara Lindholm to come up and describe the hardship that has made this application necessary. My client's family, Mrs. Lindholm's family, has owned the home at 68 Michigan Street since the 1940s. It currently is a 60 by 60 lot with a single-family small home on the premises. I've submitted pictures along with the application. 64, I believe it is abutting the parking lot of the Carvel Ice Cream 7-Eleven in the West End, just on the north side of Beach Street, and 68 is just north of that. 68 was bought in the 1940s, and it was the Lindholm home. In 1971, they also acquired 64 to use as a rental to supplement their income. Mrs. Lindholm's brother is ill with schizophrenia, and as a result requires care, which right now is being financed by the Lindholms themselves while they wait to sell these properties. They're seeking to subdivide both of the properties. I can just discuss one for the record now and then the other, or we can do these together. Let's discuss 68. The subdivision that's requested is,
You're gonna discuss 68 first?
why, which one would we
I
call?
called in 64 first.
Let's
If you
do
want, I can
64.
call- Okay.
What would you like to do? Put them
I
together?
already called in 64, but if you want to discuss.
You want to incorporate it into the record, Mr. Kelly?
incorporated into
Both
records.
cases
I think so.
Let me just call
It's
it
the
in
same
then.
story, right? So,
It's the same story.
All right.
And
Case
it's-
number 3318, application of 77 Lease Corp., care of Robert Lindholm of 68 Michigan Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5M subdivision for subdividing a 60-60 parcel into two 30-by-60 parcels at 68 Michigan Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 58, Block 99, lots 20 through 21 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Thank you, Mrs. Lynch. Now I will be addressing both properties at the same time. The arguments for both are synonymous with each other, and that is they are both 60 by 60 lots, both with single-family homes on them. The homes primarily sit on the 30 by 60 side, on a 30 by 60 side of the larger parcel. What's being proposed is a subdivision, and as to the law and its application of the law given this application, what's being proposed is not outside the character of the community, the neighborhood. I think all of the houses on Michigan Street between Park and Beach Street sit on 30 by 60 lots. In fact, if you take an aerial view through Google Maps of the West End, there's very few empty lots left. Most of the lots have been subdivided, the ones that could recently. What's being proposed will not be detrimental to the community. It's highly likely that after these lots are sold, that the now empty lots will become FEMA-compliant houses with probably adequate parking underneath, given the elevation requirement of almost 13 feet in the West End. The other two houses may be sold as single-family houses, and maybe they won't change at all, or maybe those as well will be demolished, and we'll see FEMA-compliant houses arise there as well. The variances requested aren't substantial, given the fact that they're going to conform with the existing code and not require any other variances other than our prohibition against subdivision in the West End. There's no other means by which the Lindholms can achieve the goal that they seek, and that is funding of a trust, which I'll have Mrs. Lindholm describe to you. And the hardship here is, in fact, the trust and her brother John. So with that, I'll ask Barbara Lindholm to come up and discuss why it is that they need to try to do this.
Name and address, please, ma'am.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing my case. I am Barbara Lindholm. I live at 208 Woodfield Road in West Hempstead. My brother is John Simanowitz. I am actually a native Long Beach person. I was born in Long Beach at the old Long Beach Memorial Hospital, as well as all my siblings. And we all grew up in Long Beach and attended all the schools here and played in the sands on the beaches of Long Beach. And we all attended, as I said, the public schools. My mother and father, this is just a little side story, which I think you might like to hear. My father's older brother, Walter, had a friend who was Jimmy Durante. I don't know if anybody remembers who Jimmy Durante was, but he was a comedian back in the 40s. And he lived on Michigan Street, believe it or not. And so he told my father's brother, Walter, you know, there's this house for sale. And this house was 93 Michigan Street. So Walter said to my father, Joe, you got to get some money together and buy this house. So that was the first house my father bought. Then as time goes on, another friend from down the block says to him, hey, Joe, there's another house for sale, but this one has a side lot. There are two properties, and you already have 3 children. So what he did was he went down and he bought the properties of 68 Michigan Street. There were 2 separate lots, lots 20 and 21, and he bought them. And that's where I spent my entire life and my family's entire life up until we got married and we went our separate ways. with the exception of my brother John. Unfortunately, when my brother John was about 18 years of age, something happened. We don't know why people get schizophrenia, how it happens, or what does. Up until about that time, my brother John had graduated from high school and he worked as a carpenter's apprentice, earning minimal money. He worked for about 3 years. And somewhere during that period, he developed schizophrenia. I'll never forget the day my mother called me up and said, "Barbara, you have to come here. Something's wrong with John." And I came to the house and I saw my brother. And like another world, walking around the yard, singing to me in a sing-song voice, "Hi, Barbara." I go, "Oh, Mama." And I didn't know what to do because I was in my early 20s. What do you do? That's the point my life as a caregiver began. And I've been taking care of John ever since. And my mother, God bless her. You know, she was 99 years old when she died back in 2018. And I'll share with you another interesting story. When I used to go to, after she passed, I would go to City Hall because we paid for the taxes and everything for the buildings out of our own money because my mom really didn't have any money. She was living on Social Security and the rental income she got from the properties that she owned, which was 64 Michigan Street. And there really wasn't much money, so we paid for the restoration of the house after Sandy, my husband and I. And I've been paying her, we paid her grocery bills, I paid for her medication, I bought John's clothes, I bought her clothes. And this is what you do for your family. Now, John, as I said, never really worked. He had no income. And after my mother died, John continued to live in the house by himself. But I would go there twice a week. I would cook, clean, take him grocery shopping, do his laundry. But he never went to a doctor. I took him to the doctors to get him medications because we found out he had high blood pressure. And to get his schizophrenia treated, I took him to doctors. But as time went on, John said to me, "I can't live here alone anymore. I don't want to live alone." And so I took him into my own home. Living with someone with schizophrenia is very challenging. My mom was a very strong woman, and she had the ability to ignore a lot of stuff, let me tell you. I am not so fortunate. I had my brother John living with me for a year, more than a year, almost 2 years, and it was getting more and more difficult because he would refuse to take his medication. He didn't want to go to the doctors. And then one day, I found him collapsed upstairs in his room. He couldn't get up. He was like frozen solid. And I had to call an ambulance to take him to the hospital, and that's when we found out that he probably also has Parkinson's disease. So I couldn't bring him back home, and we had him in a nursing home. And John says to me, "I can't stay here." By the way, I'm paying for that nursing home too. And Bob and I said, "Well, we've got to find another place." And we did find an assisted living place who took him in. He's doing quite well. I still take him to the doctor. I still buy his clothes, and I take him out. Fortunately, I'm not cooking for him anymore, and I'm not cleaning. That's the best part. But he has no money, and again, I'm paying for his stay at the assisted living. So the reason for the request to divide the properties is so that I can get the most money I can to put back into the trust and pay for John's needs up until the time that he is no longer with us, and also to ensure that when I'm gone, there is money there to take care of him, because my children will have this responsibility too if he is still alive, because somebody has to take care of him. So what I'm really trying to do, I'm trying to do the right thing for my brother and for my family, and have money to pay all his bills and his expenses, which is why I'm asking for this subdivision of the properties.
Do you have anybody right now who's expressed no interest in the property? In other words, are you in any kind of situation right now where you have, let's say, contingent upon the subdivision, entered into any kind of written or unwritten agreement to sell the property to a developer or someone who's going to take it and build?
At the moment, no, there was, but he negated the deal because he said he wouldn't buy them unless they could be subdivided.
Right.
So we do not have a contract with
So
anyone.
basically what's, we're looking at now, just to be clear, on those other lots, so let's say we were dealing with the possible 4 lots, right?
Correct,
Are there 2 homes now on those 4
Correct.
lots?
correct.
And are those homes in a position where they occupy part of the second side lot?
No, they're on individual 30 by 60 properties, and the deed.
So the other, I understand that sometimes, there can be 2 deeds to a 60 by 60, but the question I have is there any part of that home that, let's say, is on Lot A and also is partly on Lot B?
No.
That would have to be removed?
No.
You'll see on the drawings, Mr. Chairman, there are concrete pads. Those are like little patios, which I think just cross the property.
There are patios.
That's the lot line. But otherwise, the houses sit squarely on the one
Yeah, I see.
35, 60 lot.
And they would have the proper setbacks in those situations from the structure to where the lot line would be?
I
Or
believe
they,
so. I can't say that. What Commissioner Creighton is asking is if we took the concrete pad away, would we then, if you just looked at the lot boundaries, would the house be sitting where no other variances would be necessary? Meaning, in other words, it has the proper side yard and rear yard
It would be
setback.
it would be 2 separate lots, correct?
So to answer your question, it looks like it from I went to the property, it looks like it because they're small. And in fact, I believe that one of the properties was actually 2 lots and 2 buildable lots until the city suggested, this is how old they are.
Right.
The city suggested putting the 2 lots together to save on taxes.
That was in 1967.
And
I forgot.
And the 2 houses are very similar to each other where they sit. So I'm gonna say I think so, but I can't be absolutely honest.
Right.
And your idea is to sell all 4 lots?
Correct.
The 2
don't some
houses that
people-
are already there, they're not gonna remain, right? They're gonna be demolished or no?
I don't know.
I'd imagine they would be their bungalows, but, and some people want to buy larger lots to build larger homes. You see them all over the West End too, right? It's surprisingly this big house in the middle of a stream of 30 wide properties.
I've had several people inquire, and I was willing to sell them, but when they found out that they were attached and they'd have to buy the house and the lot, they said they couldn't afford to do that.
No, I'm saying people who want to buy both the house and the lot together to build a larger house centered on the 60 by 60. You see them around, speckled around the West End too. I would imagine that would be a potential market for selling it also. That's all I'm saying.
Have you done a market analysis? I understand what you're trying to do is you're asking this board to subdivide those 2 properties into 4 properties. But have you done a market analysis on what the value of those double plots are? Like Commissioner Walton said, those are very desirable, buildable plots for bigger houses, where personally I know a lot of people that are looking for those type of properties. Can you look at the value in which you would gain from selling them as a whole property instead of subdividing versus selling them as individual properties?
I can't answer that, I'm sorry, either. My husband might be able to. address that?
Yes. Robert Lindholm, 208 Woodfield Road, West Hempstead, New York. Married to Barbara for close to 50 years, a couple weeks. We did look into that. The problem is you have the 7-Eleven, you have the Carvel, you have the parking lot, and the side piece of property that's on 64 is not a desirable piece of property because across the street you have Minnesota's, you also have the Knights of Columbus, you also have the headquarters there for the, I think it's the October St. Patrick's Day party. One of the tenants just recently moved out, and one of the complaints was the number of people that would just walk up to the yard and just urinate. So a lot of people weren't interested in it as a combined lot and put a double piece of property.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to open this up to the audience. And members of the audience want to speak in favor of this application, these two applications. Anybody want to speak against? All right, case will remain open for voting unless anyone wants to make against. Come on up, I didn't see your hands. Name and address, please.
Hi, J.B. Lowe, 75 Michigan. I live right down the street from the proposed properties. Two main points I wanted to bring up in opposition. Number one is the amount of congestion that's already on our street. We actually did a survey with the Department of Public Works in June because we're trying to put in some speed bumps for all the kids that we have on the street. And there was something like 1,250 cars that go down our street per day. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but there's only 1,440 minutes in a day, so that's almost a car a minute. If you assume that there's not a lot of cars going down the street at night, that's basically a car every 30 seconds. So the amount of construction that would be happening if there's 4 new houses built on those lots, plus 4 new families moving in, we just think that the amount of congestion that type of subdivision would increase is just a little bit too much. Now, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry to interrupt. I was just curious if you can give us a picture of how the parking is currently on Michigan.
Well, left side, it's a one-way street, so the left side is completely no parking. On the right side, I would say about a third of the houses have curbs cut out to go into driveways. So the amount of parking on that end of the street is actually the only place that you can actually park. That's not something that I know a lot about, but yeah, that's the situation. My second point was just on the amount of vulnerable people we have that live on the street. We have 15 kids that are under the age of 7, so this comes back to the congestion issue. We also have an autistic child on the street, a deaf child on the street, as well as 2 handicapped older individuals who both have wheelchairs and typically ride their scooters down the street. Again, worried about the amount of traffic on the street. That's really it, just those main 2 points.
Thank you.
Yeah, no go.
Someone else?
Amazing.
Come on up, I see your hand in the back. Name and address, please.
Mark Pelletier, 81 Michigan. Mark Pelletier, 81 Michigan. I'm one of the only houses on the block that's still a bungalow with not raised, no driveway or anything. Dividing these lots into 2 lots will be 2 more driveways on the parking side of the street, which will eliminate a substantial amount of parking, along with the fact that you're having more people, more houses, so you have more people on the street, which is going to add congestion and parking problems. So that's my opinion.
Thank you very much. Somebody else? Yeah. Come up, have hands. Name and address, please.
Roseanne Stone, 84 Michigan Street. I live on the same side of the block where all the parking is done. Adjacent to my house also, which wasn't mentioned, is someone who has a very large space because they're talking about, we have a MS person, and so they have a handicap van that has to be parked. We have a severe problem with the parking lot as it exists now. I have no objection to two houses, but to subdivide those properties, I agree with the idea put out that they're desirable as two properties instead of four properties. You see a lot of them. We have a very, very narrow block. You can hardly turn into it to make you turn on the street because they park illegally at the corner to get their ice creams and everything. And as far as undesirable, as her husband was saying, actually dividing it into four would make that fourth house very undesirable. Whereas if you had two whole properties and one was more open to that lot, it would be much more desirable building it in that way. I have a lot of feelings for her and her family. I know that situation is tough, but there's a lot of things to consider here, and our own value of way we're living in the West End with how everything has gone up and how everything has gotten more congested is another one of our concerns, so.
Okay, thank you very much. There's somebody else, raise your hand, come on up.
Hi, Lindsay Meehan, 67. Lindsay Meehan, 67 Michigan Street. I'm a teacher here in Long Beach also, and one of the perks of Michigan Street, besides the neighbors, is that strip right where 64 and 68 are. Allows a lot of parking across from the temple. It's also great parking for West Elementary School teachers. As we know, the West End's super congested as it is. Thinking about adding 4 more houses to that area seems crazy. 2 houses would be much better in my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
James Meehan, 67 Michigan Street. Pretty much the same thing. We're right across the street, so we knew moving into this house that at some point they're probably going to be developed over there, but I think, you know, we have a neighbor that has a only double lot house on the block. It sold for 1.3 about a year ago, so I do feel that it's possible that they can build 2 large homes and still get a significant amount of money. With maybe only taking up 1 driveway space. But that's pretty much it.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, the case is going to remain open. Oh, you got someone else, okay, go ahead.
I don't have much to add.
Name and address.
Name and
Oh,
address.
sorry, Patricia Dentise, 87 Michigan Street. Patricia Dentise, 87 Michigan Street. I don't have much to add. I just agree with all my neighbors and all their thoughts. I have sympathy for the family, but one thing I wanted to add is that on our block, we never got any notice about the subdivision of the houses. And I remember when, Sandy was, after Hurricane Sandy, that was something that always happened. We had to send out any kind of changes in the property. Variances, letters had to be, sent out to all the neighbors. And none of us got that until we saw the sign on the property. And I don't know if that was like a slip up but just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, there was one other, go ahead, come on up. Thank you.
Jason Contagny, 92 Michigan Street. My neighbors covered most of it. Again, for me, primary concern is densification, congestion, traffic. Got a couple of small kids. There's plenty of other small kids on the block who aren't represented here today, but plenty of them. And I just, again, no real opposition to development, to them monetizing the properties, to revitalizing 2 older houses and something newer, better, probably good for the neighborhood. But again, would just ask if it's really necessary to divide into 4 to optimize the value of the properties. I mean, just think about how rare those 60 by 60 lots are in the West End, how desirable they are. There's a handful of them, but not many. But I definitely think that there's, it's certainly possible that they could extract comparable value by just, keeping them together. So I ask you to just consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that's it. Kelly, go ahead.
I just want to say this as to the larger house on the property. Some would consider that completely out of character with the West End. I know that because my mother lives on 89 Virginia, and I was on the council that passed this law January 4th, 2000, my first city council meeting. We passed this law because we were worried about congestion. And now you've seen some enormous houses, absolutely, completely out of character with the blocks that run north and south in the West End being built. So be careful what you ask for, because they have their own issues that come with them. And some of us actually like the look of the new FEMA compliant house that runs in a nice row, and we want to obviously encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. You know what? Come on up.
You have to wait till you get up
Give us
there,
your name and
give your
address,
name and address.
Sure, Mike Kleiner, 71 Michigan Street.
Last name was again?
Kleiner. Kleiner. So I have the house next door to Jim, which is across the street from where they're trying to develop, and I'm on a 60 by 60 lot. And, I came here from Westchester a year ago, brand new to Long Beach, and I came here because, the 60 by 60 lot offered an opportunity for my kids to have a small backyard and also have a nice big house, for the family. So I just want to mention that, having a 60 by 60 is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing. And I think that subdividing the lots it's a terrible idea. And I think they also have plenty of money to be made for, by just building two big houses. There'll be plenty of money there for everybody. So I just wanted to.
Do you have a new home on that
Yes,
lot?
yes.
I mean, what would you consider the appraised value of that to be?
So I bought it for 1.3, and I think it's worth about 1.6 right now. And by the way, I'm a certified residential real estate appraiser. That's what I do for a living. So that numbers are pretty accurate.
Thanks.
So, thank you, guys.
Well, the observation that a lot of people have made is that, the more homes and curb cuts, the tougher it is to park in the West End, because a lot of people don't use their garages anyway, other than for storage or, other purposes. The cars aren't in there. And the problem is that it's gotten harder and harder even for the patrons of the businesses in the West End to be able to park where every block now is inundated with curb cuts. So we certainly understand the problems with comparing, 4 homes to 2, and the curb cuts would go with that. So, does anybody want to make a motion on the application, or do we want to think about it?
I think that we should evaluate the hardships for a month if they want to submit something to substantiate that, and just be fair. Right?
Yeah, it seems like there's still money to be made no matter what.
There is, I agree. Oh, there
And we
totally
don't
is.
really have to, it's not our purpose to really facilitate the maximization of that profit
Okay.
to the detriment of a neighborhood potentially.
I mean, I agree that the density is a problem down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that unfortunately Sandy has created a lot of issues, not just in, the rebuilding of the West End, but certainly in the creation of many more curb cuts that we never had before. And I don't understand how people that operate businesses in the West End can continue when people that are patrons don't go there anymore because they can't park.
It's a detriment. I mean,
And especially if the garages were actually being used as garages. But if you take a walking tour, I'll guarantee you that on those levels you'll see plenty of TVs on and pool tables and all kinds of stuff. And I challenge people to do that. Okay, so the case is going to remain open until voting. If you would like to submit some financials, you can. And we will be voting on this case subsequently, and I believe it is October 24th. Thank you.
Case number 3295, application of Michael and Wendy Goldstein of 83 Joyce Road, Plainview, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.13C lot area, 9-105.13D building area, 9-105.13E front yard, 9-105.13F side yard, 9-105.13F1 side yard, 9-105.13G rear yard, 9-105.13I density, 9-105.13K off-street parking, 9-113.2G off-street parking location, 9-113.2H off-street parking size, for a proposed six-story multiple dwelling with 6 units at 454 East Broadway, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 160, Lot 28, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. Dennis G. Kelly, 120 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, 11561. Here on behalf of Michael and Wendy Goldstein, revisiting a piece of property that we discussed, I believe, at the end of April 28th, 2022. We've submitted amended plans reflecting a smaller building. What we have now is we have a building that's 1 story less than was previously put before the board. The height of which has come down almost 10 feet, from 67 feet to about 58, or almost 68 to about 58 feet. We've also decreased the number of units from 8 units to 6 units. That would include 4 2-bedrooms on the 3rd and 4th floor, 2 3-bedrooms on the 5th and 6th floor. We've eliminated that larger rooftop deck that we originally proposed in April. Instead, we've put the mechanicals on the roof. The 2nd floor is recreation and storage area. Parking previously had been 9 provided spots for a needed 16 spots pursuant to code. Now we still have the same 9 spots, and instead we're only required 12, given the fact that we've lowered the number of units to the building. I also wanted to highlight as you can see in the plans, what I basically have described is depicted within the plans. So we've made the house smaller. We've made the number of units smaller. We do have an environmental consultation or review that's being conducted. My client deposited $10,000 with the city to be held in escrow for the purposes of conducting that environmental review. I don't know the status of the review, but we had done these plans, so we figured we'd get them to you and get your reaction to them. Again, I don't think I have Mr. Gallinaro with me this evening because of his parent-teacher meetings, but I think it's the same plan but smaller. I do have my client with me. If there's any questions for either of us.
Now, Mr. Kelly, just because, we've been kind of around this case already, can you describe for us one more time the reduction, the percentage of reduction?
The percentage of the, in other words...
How have you reduced this from originally as planned?
Okay, maybe I wasn't clear, or maybe we're all getting a little tired. I am. Originally, we had proposed 1 more story, so I believe that would have been 6 stories with a rooftop deck. Now we're down to 5 stories, no rooftop deck. We had initially proposed 8 units. Now we've only proposed 6 units. Now we've proposed 4 2-bedrooms on the 3rd and 4th floor and 2 3-bedrooms on the 5th and 6th floor. We still have the rec storage area because my client believes and he's right, it would be a nice amenity to the building. We were required in the previous plan to have 16 parking spaces when we only had 9. Now we're required to have 12 parking spaces and still obviously had the 9. There was two other, you'll see two other,
What was the configuration of the apartments before? Because there were a couple of 2-bedrooms, and then was there, just to refamiliarize
there's a
myself,
definite,
there were a couple of
it's a good
1-bedrooms?
question,
Right.
Mr. Chairman. There definitely was. The same one. Bear with me, please, 1 second. I definitely have them here. Okay. So as to the apartments. Probably should be able to just get it from the cover page. There were 4 3, I beg your pardon, there were 4 2-bedroom apartments and 4 3-bedroom apartments. So there were 8 units, and there were 4 2-bedrooms, and there were 4 3-bedrooms. So now we've obviously eliminated, I guess, a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom in the new plans.
So each floor is 2-bedroom and 3 bedrooms?
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Each floor is a 2-bedroom and 3 bedroom? I don't know if I can.
So okay, I'll give it to you one more time. There's 4 2-bedrooms, Commissioner, and they're on floors 3 and 4. So there's 2 bedrooms on 3, 2 bedrooms on 4. Then there's 2 3-bedrooms, one on 5 and one on 6. We've also, on the previous plan, there was a large, the rec and storage area, or the rec area, was on the top, which also led out to the roof. So it was a very large recreation rooftop deck. And that's really where the height, a lot of the height came from. That took us up to 67 feet, 6 inches. We eliminated that and left just the bulkhead for mechanicals. And now it's 58.1 inches.
Sorry, I don't remember the original drawings, but this is a pretty substantial variance that you're looking for. There's 10 items on here. The first one, lot area, you're requesting 40,000 when it's usually, they're usually requesting 4,000 lot area, square feet, and you're supposed to have 40,000. Code states 20% of the lot area, you're proposing 60% of the lot area, so it's 3 times.
Right.
Front yard, 10 foot, you're proposing 1 foot, so 1 10. Side yard, 5 feet, 9 feet, as opposed to 37 and a half feet. These are substantial, and there's a lot of them. I don't know, I think this is just too much of an ask. I don't know, I would have a hard time, agreeing with half of these variances, no less 10 of them.
Yeah.
That are significant.
A question I would have is with, Mr. Kelly, with the smaller home that's, relatively small home that's existing now, right? Are any of these 10 pre-existing to even that original home?
If I may, I just need to get my denial letter.
For example, the front yard, no, the front yard, this house is set back. The building area, obviously not. The lot area, I'm not sure. The side area looks like it's in compliance. The rear yard, I'm not sure. The density, certainly not. The off-street parking, certainly not. And the parking spots, you know, there was a questionable number in the front, I believe, that were not really in compliance. So even though you got nine, what did you say, you had the requirement of 12 and you were providing 9.
Right.
3 of them are parking spots that are not really in full compliance because of the fact that they're shorter.
Yeah, I don't know why that wasn't on the first,
So to echo, you know, what Commissioner just said, is that, you know, even though there are tall buildings in the area, you know, a lot of them were built in the 60s and 70s. And the thing is, we're looking at something now that is going to be really intruding a lot more on the codes than the stuff that was already there, you know, which we can't really necessarily pattern ourselves after. I don't know, it just seems like a lot.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you, Mr. Chairman, but I will say this. What my client's seeking to achieve, he's got a 4-unit house, which is virtually dilapidated and unattractive, to say the least. And he's trying to do something with it where he, yes, gets more units. Well, we have 4 units. I think what you're highlighting is we're asking for much bigger units. Not only more units, but bigger units.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, also, you know, the height, we're talking 6 stories, and I know that may fit within the realm of the code. But the thing is, in light of the fact that there was also these other variances, you know, in other words, let's say the code, you know, permits 6 stories, right? That's okay, you know, because of the fact that...
But not necessarily on 4,000 square feet.
That's it.
Right. I understand.
And the density is a big issue.
So we're not going to give up.
What's that?
We're not going to give up.
No, I mean,
we may go back to the
I
drawing
admire-
board. Listen, he invested the $10,000 in doing the environmental.
No, I know this.
And I also know that the Planning Commission, Nassau County Planning Commission, I think disapproved this on the first round. And you know,
I just don't understand, like, it's a 4-family house, just renovating the house as is should generate a respectable amount of income.
well, I think he's trying to achieve a couple of things. I don't necessarily disagree with you. You know, it's
Families, that would definitely pull in like $15,000 a month in that.
it's building. He to his credit, to a great degree, and he's here with me this evening. He has a vision, right? And I think that he may have gotten a little carried away on the first plan, especially. I think what he's trying to do is build a nice FEMA-compliant building that has nice, attractive units in it. These 2 plans that you've seen are admittedly a little carried away.
But there's a 1-story house next to it and a 2-story house on the other side of it, right?
Yeah, the problem with the block is, and it's not a problem obviously, it is the nature of the block, is you have one building on one end and you have another building, I mean I'm talking multifamily dwellings on both ends, and then in the middle you have the single-family homes, which actually kind of looks nice. But we've also seen development across the street of the townhouses directly across the street, which are pretty big. And that was even before FEMA compliant requirements.
They're not 6 stories high, are they?
No.
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 And they do have parking.
And they've got parking.
Each
Right.
unit has
A park,
We have
parking,
that whole
right.
Haberman project going, I mean,
Right.
the parking's gonna be harder and harder out
And then we have other buildings that have gone up, admittedly on some bigger lots further east. So it may be out of character with the block, but it might not necessarily be completely out of character with the zone.
Just where does it stop? If everybody in the whole block wanted to do this, would it be acceptable for the neighborhood? What if the guy next door wants to do it
that's
right now? everybody wanted to do that, what would this neighborhood be like?
Well, you know, you laugh, but
I'm talking about
but
I'm
part of
thinking
it,
about the
it's already
I'm
happened.
thinking about the precedent here, because
Right.
chances are he's gonna pull a nice amount of money out of this house, in profit, then he can buy the property next door, and he'll be back to do the same, and the precedent has now been set, right? So
Right.
I'm just
But
wondering,
I
like,
think
where do
the
you draw
precedent.
line?
I think I may be mistaken by saying this, but I think the precedent's been set by a couple of buildings, maybe not necessarily on such a narrow lot. So I mean, I get your point, Commissioner. I don't think I don't.
I mean, we already see some of, you know, Dennis, we've already seen, I think we probably agree, what narrow properties look like when they have some height, you know, and then we see a couple going on around National, you know, that kind of thing, and it just, you know, it just exacerbates what, you know, all these cases that we hear month after month after month, it just exacerbates what everybody is complaining about, you know, the density, the parking, and everything else. And to Commissioner Alton, you know, when does it stop, you know, and when do we look to say, you know, unless something has a direct precedent, you know, should we be opening up new precedents, you know? And that is a concern. I mean, we have allowed certainly townhouses, we have allowed certainly other types of buildings that, you know, are a little bit of a tax on the community, if you will, in terms of space, services, et cetera. But the thing is, this is a block where there are smaller homes, and now we're taking one of those, you know, there's 4 families all around the East the East Broadway section of Long Beach in those streets. And now we're just putting another, I'm not gonna call it a high-rise, but although for our community, 6 stories is pretty tall. And the thing is, it's growing, you know, and it's getting more and more dense. And, you know, we're letting it happen, you know, and that's a bit of a problem. Because, again, going back to what Commissioner Creighton said, there's 10 variances here that we need to give relief from the code. And again, if he were building 6 stories, which he could, the height's not an issue, and it were on a decent sized lot, you know, we might not even be here really that long, because we'd look at the lot and say, well, you know, he's got like a 30,000 square foot lot, he's still deficient by 10,000, so let it go, because we have done that already. But I don't know that we've ever, to be quite honest with you, I don't know that we've ever set, or at least I can't think of where we set a 6-story building on a 4,000 square foot lot. I mean, you know, Council, you won't remember since your tenure on the board, and I certainly don't remember it on mine. And it's been like 20 years, so I think more. But
It's more.
that's my concern, huh?
I said it's more.
Yeah, more. I didn't want to admit to it. But you know what I'm saying, and this is no, you know, disparaging remarks.
No, we'll go.
I admire what he's trying to do.
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
going to go back to
and
the
he
drawing
does have a
board.
vision.
Right. Listen.
But we're still.
Let's put it this way.
We're still having to act
we're-
responsibly about it. You know?
Yes, I'm sorry. I wanted to present it. Joe had written the plans. I wanted to present it, even though the environmental's not back, because I wanted exactly what I just got. I'm not necessarily,
Well,
you know, I wanted the
here's-
comments.
Here's a I think a fair, let's say, suggestion. I mean, I think you probably realize if we took a vote on this tonight, probably wouldn't pass. So
I would
don't
ask you
know
not
if
to.
you want to go back with Mr. Goldstein and talk about it, and maybe you want to submit something a little different.
Yes.
Before the next meeting, if it's good with him. And, you know, I would probably hold it off on having us vote on this.
But
I think-
even these larger developments that are being discussed, you know, Superblock, the Hebrew Academy, they're all proposing more parking than code just to try and find a way to make it work.
The parking.
More than code.
More than code.
Yeah, and I think this neighborhood desperately needs more than code.
It's a tight neighborhood because of Shore Road and everything that exists around it, you know.
You made a comment, you know, and it was funny when we were doing another property, and you said, you know, and it was like January, and you said, you know, I was down there in the middle of the day and I couldn't get a parking space.
I couldn't visit my mother when she moved up. She wanted to buy in Lafayette Terrace.
Right.
And I begged her to, and she went up on Shore Road for a lousy $10,000 better deal, and I couldn't visit her.
Right.
It was horrible.
I had the same experience,
couldn't stop.
January,
I couldn't find
midday,
parking spot in the
midweek.
neighborhood. It was
sorry.
really bad. I mean, that's how it is up there, and that was a while ago. It's gotten more dense since then.
Yeah, I think, well, we'll hear from the audience anyway, obviously.
Right.
As
Thank
they
you.
want to speak.
Can I make one more comment and question just before you go?
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
So my comment is, I won't say anything about the height because it's really the only variance you didn't apply for here. So I don't have an issue with the height. It's the rest of it altogether. But my other comment is, you said, you know, you got rid of the rooftop deck. And then I'm a little curious, when you look at the plans, there's railings on the roof, like see-through railings. When you have a parapet wall going around 3/4 of it, or, you know, even more than that, say 15/16 of it, but each of the corners have railings.
Right.
For what purpose?
I couldn't answer that. I'll ask Joe. I reviewed these with Joe, you know, obviously before coming here this evening. So he said, you know, he made the comment that we eliminated the rooftop deck. So maybe not completely. Now that I look at it as a much bigger, you know, I definitely will follow up with them.
Yeah.
I think, given comments this evening, Commissioner Crane, I think you can kiss the rooftop deck goodbye.
Okay.
All right, so let's hear from the folks. Like, anybody
Thank you.
want to speak in favor, please? Come on. Against? Against?
Anyone against?
Yeah, want to. Name and address, please.
Good evening, Robert McLaughlin, 456 East Broadway. As I've addressed the board before, I'll keep this as brief as possible. But, you know, whether this is a 7-story structure or a 6-story structure, really, my concerns remain the same. The plan calls for multiple off-street parking underneath a frame constructed building. A 40 by 100-foot lot was never intended for 9 parking spots under a building, okay? Especially when there's a 4-foot setback on one side of the house and an 8-foot setback on the other side of the house. It's just too close. The fire exposure is too close to the surrounding adjacent properties, okay? Should there be a car fire or any kind of structural fire in that building, primarily there's bedrooms in the rear of the building. No portable ladder could ever ladder a building that's 6 stories tall, okay? You need an aerial ladder to ladder this building to evacuate tenants, okay? There's a central staircase, one staircase in the building for egress of tenants on the upper floors. If you have smoke coming up those stairs, they're going to be trapped on those upper floors, and the fire department is going to have trouble rescuing them. Of course, the density problem is a huge problem on East Broadway, as you know. You know, we have a large multiple dwelling, 410 East Broadway on the corner. Every other building on the block is 2 stories, all the way. We have a multiple dwelling on the corner of Franklin. It's a 2-story structure. It's a garden apartment, okay? So there is nothing taller than 2 stories on the entire block except for the corner brick building. And with the recent development of the building on Long Beach Road, this is about 2.5 blocks away. They're building 243 units over there, okay? We don't know the impact that's going to have on East Broadway, okay, until those buildings are built. You know, no matter how many off-street parking spots they provide in a building like that, people always have more cars. On our block, we have a 10-unit condo across the street that Mr. Shokian built a number of years ago. There were 2 single-family homes there, knocked them down, put up 10 units, okay? There goes a lot of parking, okay? We have the Long Beach Hotel on the corner, constant transient parking in and out, people walking down the block with suitcases all the time, okay? So there's never enough parking on our block. What is the impact going to be when the super block's built and the building on Long Beach Road? You know, I'm very concerned about the impact of the parking over there. And, you know, I just ask the board to consider, like, the future anticipated impact, these huge multiple dwellings, and just to be conservative when deciding if this proposal is ludicrous, to have a 6-story structure in the middle of a residential block. And I just think it sets a dangerous precedent for any other buildings on. If you allow this to happen, that another contractor or developer can come along and want to build a six-story building, like in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's like ridiculous. You know, and you know what? I'm a lifelong resident. I went to school here, okay? Mr. Goldstein, he lives in Central Islip. He came in, wherever he lives, okay? He lives out east, okay? He comes in here, he bought a house. All he wants to do is build it up. He has 4 rentals in the place right now. He's got 9 people living in the house. He has absolutely very poor property management, no gardener, no snow removal, no one takes care of the garbage, there's garbage piled up, his property management is deplorable, okay? And I'm just concerned, if he has all these apartments, who's gonna take care of this building? We have to live next door to this, okay? And if he spent $10,000 on a impact and his house is dilapidated, maybe he should take some money and put it into the house that he has already and make that better. Because, I don't know, he has these grand plans. He just got a variance to build a story on his house on Neptune Boulevard, all right? Recently granted a variance to go up a story and add a rooftop deck on Neptune Boulevard. So, I mean, he's just coming in here, and I just feel like he's taking advantage of Long Beach and the residents of Long Beach. And I just ask you to be conservative when you decide how you should handle this.
Okay, thank you. Others, there were others. Anybody else? All right, if that's the case is going to remain open until voting. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.